Chapter 607. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, thousands of students turned their eyes toward Enlin. There were very few spectators for the other three battles. The reason for this was that the legendary Enlin of the United University of Cultivation was about to battle the legendary war god of the Immortal Spirit Tower. This was destined to be a legendary battle. Enlin's power was undeniable. Even though many people didn't think that Enlin would be able to pass the 98th level, Enlin was the most powerful prodigy in the entire university. In fact, he was a prodigy that only appeared once every 10,000 years. This was something that very few people would question. Perhaps some people would mock him, or perhaps others would give him all types of strange titles. However, in the hearts of the students of Xiaoxian United University, Enlin was destined to be an insurmountable figure. He was a legendary figure that was worthy of being remembered after they graduated. Enlin's power level was unknown, but he was very powerful. Hence, his battle attracted almost everyone's attention. Bai Zhong, as well as the Celestial Dharch, who had chosen to observe from the shadows, were all watching the battle in silence. On the 98th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Xing Tian stepped forward, and the black circle beneath his feet suddenly expanded to encompass the entire floor of the tower, creating a bottomless abyss that enshrouded Enlin within. Boom! An extremely terrifying burst of battle intent swept toward Enlin. The battle intent seemed to be able to crush the heavens, and it was even more powerful than Enlin's battle intent after activating his body of the war god. He was like a war god who had emerged from a sea of blood and corpses. At the same time, a boundless sense of plummeting assaulted Enlin's body, as if his entire body were about to be engulfed by the boundless darkness beneath his feet. This was the first time Enlin had faced a powerful being at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage as a soul formation stage cultivator, and all of the cells in his body were trembling. This was the first time he had faced a powerful being of this caliber, and he was struck by a sense of dread due to the natural disparity in cultivation base, but he was also struck by the thrill of battling someone of a higher cultivation base. Xing Tian's eyes gradually turned dark, and his voice was soft and gentle, but it was imbued with boundless killing intent. The darkness on the ground is the domain of my Tao of the Abyss. If the weak were within the range of this domain, they would lose their will to fight due to the endless fear of the abyss, and eventually be devoured by the darkness. You're quite calm. Not bad. Xing Tian pointed a finger at Enlin. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance to attack. Bring out your domain and attack me with all your might. I'll make you concede defeat wholeheartedly. I don't have a domain, Enlin said awkwardly. How can you not have a domain? Are you a false immortal? Xing Tian sneered. When Enlin heard this, he sighed with emotion in his heart. He was right. Fine, I've already given you a chance. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Xing Tian didn't waste any more words. He clenched his fists tightly, and a monstrous killing intent swept out like a demon god in this world. A golden lotus appeared on Enlin's forehead. He took a step forward and attacked first. His body tore through the air like a cannonball, and his fist was imbued with the vast power of the earth as it came crashing down toward Xing Tian's head. Xing Tian's expression was as calm as still water in the face of Enlin's attack. His fist hurtled toward Enlin at blinding speed, choosing to meet Enlin's attack head-on. Boom! The golden power of the earth exploded forth, and the terrifying shock waves even caused the abyss on the ground to tremor slightly. Xing Tian felt as if an extremely vast power was tearing through his entire body. He was then blasted flying by Enlin right before everyone's astonished eyes, and his body crashed into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Gasp! Thousands of students drew a sharp intake of breath. So powerful! The battle that they were anticipating didn't take place. Instead, the legendary war god Xing Tian was blasted flying by a single punch from Enlin. Gasp! Enlin also drew a sharp intake of breath. So weak. Enlin had heard Xing Tian boast about how powerful he was, so he didn't hold back at all. He had activated his body of the war god right from the get-go, but Xing Tian was blasted flying by a single punch. Xing Tian was also a little dumbstruck. Was Enlin really that powerful? He reflected on the power he had just unleashed and confirmed that Enlin really was very powerful. He had underestimated Enlin. Very good. Looks like you're not weak after all. You're worthy of my full power. Xing Tian dusted off his clothes before stepping into the darkness. His body suddenly flashed, and he appeared before Enlin in the blink of an eye before unleashing an almighty fist. The golden lotus insignia on Enlin's forehead flashed as his fist whistled through the air. Boom! Another fearsome collision erupted. This time, it was Enlin's turn to be knocked back by the fearsome force. Xing Tian didn't stop there as he pounced toward Enlin again. His fists left afterimages in their wake, and each and every one of them was imbued with unstoppable force. Enlin didn't evade. Instead, he chose to meet Xing Tian's fists head-on. Boom, boom, boom. The fearsome collisions caused the tower to tremor violently, and the resulting shock waves threatened to blast the ground into the air. Ha ha! This is how it feels. It's been a long time since I've fought like this. Xing Tian was getting more and more pumped up as he roared with glee. Enlin's initial success stage body of the war god was very powerful, but his punching power and technique were all inferior to Xing Tian's. In that instant, the seasoned Xing Tian was Enlin's best boxing coach. The more he fought, the more exhilarated he became. Every punch landed on flesh. This was a battle between men. Thus, the two of them continued to exchange punches with one another. Sometimes, Enlin would land a punch on Xing Tian's muscular chest, while Xing Tian would land a punch on Enlin's handsome face. However, overall, Xing Tian had the upper hand, regardless of whether it was in terms of the fearsome power behind his punches or the number of times he struck Enlin. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, most of the students had also figured out what was going on. They were stunned by the intensity of the battle, but at the same time, all of them shook their heads and heaved forlorn sighs. Student Enlin is still on the back foot. He's probably going to be defeated soon. In any case, I have no regrets from this trip to the Immortal Spirit Tower. Not only did I reap a lot of rewards, but I was also fortunate enough to witness such an exhilarating battle. A male student exclaimed with excitement. Exhilarating? Why do I feel like it's a little boring to only use fists? A female student expressed a different opinion. That's because you don't understand. The male student rolled his eyes at her before turning his attention back to the rippling images. 15 minutes later, Enlin was still on the back foot, but he was still not defeated. The two of them were still locked in an intense brawl. Many of the students who were saying that Enlin was going to be defeated soon were blushing with confusion. Why wasn't he defeated yet? He had already endured over 100 F*** punches. A student came to a sudden realization before letting loose a cry of surprise. Have you guys forgotten that God and once cultivated a type of black tortoise technique? Pete Ho. His words were like a wake-up call. Thus, all of the students turned to Enlin with even more admiration in their eyes. Thick skin was also a specialty. However, the celestial Dharch was paying attention to Enlin. His eyes narrowed slightly. I can tell that even though Enlin's combat prowess can't compare to Xing Tian's, his fist techniques are slowly becoming more powerful. It's quite clear that this is a result of his combat prowess. What terrifying potential! Furthermore, his blood essence is extremely abundant, and even though he's been on the back foot for a long period of time, his body hasn't been severely impacted. It's quite clear that his stamina and defensive prowess are both exceptional. It looks like his divine body is quite powerful. It's really hard to say who will emerge victorious. Xing Tian, who was in the middle of the battle, also realized this problem. The more he fought, the more shocked he became. It was quite clear that this junior before him was extremely supremely talented and powerful. He wasn't an arrogant challenger like he had described him to be. Instead, he was an extremely powerful opponent. Ha ha! Very good, Unlin. You're not the first type of person who admires me, nor are you the second type of person who doesn't know his place. You're the third type of person who deserves to be my opponent. Xing Tian's battle intent soared to its peak, and his muscles bulged as a red aura enshrouded his entire body. He launched a fist toward Enlin with the power of a gargantuan mountain capable of pulverizing countless lives, sending violent shockwaves surging through the entire space around him. Boom! Enlin's blood churned within his body, and the overwhelming power was too much for him to handle, sending him flying into the wall of the immortal spirit tower, causing the spell formation to tremor violently. He had unleashed his Tao of Slaughter. Chapter 608. Red blood energy swirled around Xing Tian's body, making him look like a god of death who had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Enlin felt his entire body being enveloped by an extremely terrifying murderous aura, and his muscles involuntarily trembled. The bloody aura that was condensed from the slaughter of a myriad of living beings was so heavy that it even caused space to freeze. Xing Tian could be said to be the one who had the most blood on his hands in the celestial court. Because of this, he was able to cultivate the Abyss Tao and the Slaughter Tao to the extreme. Now, he had finally displayed both of them at the same time. Xing Tian made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a crimson-black giant axe materialized in his hand. A boundless abyssal aura swept out along with the wailing of countless ghosts, making the entire world seem like a living hell. My next attack might kill you. His voice was like the proclamation of the Grim Reaper, and the crimson-black giant axe exploded with unprecedented bloodlust. In that instant, even the spectating students outside the immortal spirit tower felt a chill run down their spines. This was the fear of death, and they felt as if they could die at any moment. Enlin knew that in terms of concept and the profoundness of the Tao, the move in front of him was probably the strongest he had ever seen. He didn't hold back any longer. His 4 divine fires appeared at the same time, forming a divine fire sword in front of him. Now that he was unable to use immortal weapons, he could only rely on his own power to materialize weapons if he wanted to use the 6 strikes of the war god. Without the spirit artifact essence, sword burial could not be used. He could only use the 100 swords. Enlin slashed at Xing Tian. In an instant, extremely sharp sword chi filled the entire space. 99 heavenly swords with terrifying power gathered in the air, turning into streaks of dazzling light that whistled towards Xing Tian. In the face of the countless celestial swords, Xing Tian's eyes remained unfazed. The black rings of wind around his wrists suddenly flew into the void and extended, forming a circular wind barrier in front of him. Boom, 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 a terrifying collision ensued. The heavenly sword collided with the ring of wind, and was shattered by the ring of wind. Every time the 99 celestial swords clashed, the space would tremble. When the 90th heavenly sword struck, the ring of wind finally showed signs of collapsing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The remaining 9 celestial swords whistled through the air at the same time, their sharpness producing a series of sharp sounds in the void. At this moment, Xing Tian raised the gigantic axe in his hand and swung it down towards Enlin. In that instant, the blood axe split open the sky. The monstrous killing intent and the endless abyss dyed the world black and red. Before the 9 heavenly swords could even touch the edge of the giant axe, they were unable to withstand the terrifying power and dispersed. Enlin struck out with the final sword of his 100 swords. The flame sword formed from the 4 divine flames became the only different color in the crimson and black space. Rumble! The terrifying clash of energies caused the immortal spirit tower to tremor violently. The power of the Slaughter Tao, the Abyss Tao, and the 6 strikes of the War God exploded at the same time. The space of the 98-story pagoda was blasted by the boundless energy, and cracks appeared on the protective barrier. Outside the immortal spirit tower, Xing Tian and Enlin were no longer visible on the screen. The screen turned black, then red, and finally yellow, white, blue, and purple flames tore through the screen like sharp swords. Boom! A massive explosion erupted, and the huge ripple suddenly exploded into countless droplets of water. The screen exploded, thousands of students were dumbstruck. The ripple was connected to the protective barrier of the Immortal Spirit Tower, so didn't its explosion mean that the protective barrier had also been destroyed? All of them seemed to have realized something, and they turned their eyes toward the Immortal Spirit Tower. Reddish-black energy suddenly erupted from the top of the Immortal Spirit Tower, creating a ring of energy that radiated outward in all directions. Xian Yuan Qing, Tang Shimen, all the students. The protective barrier of the Immortal Spirit Tower has been broken? Enlin can only unleash 1% of his power. As expected, the cramped Immortal Spirit Tower can't contain someone like Enlin anymore. What's the result? I want to see the result. Where are the guardians of the restricted area? That's right. Hurry up and broadcast the footage. Why can't they handle something as simple as this? Some of the students yelled at the top of their lungs, and the crowd erupted into an uproar. As a loyal guardian of the restricted area, Bai Zhong was given quite a fright. He had thought that they would finally be able to take a break and that he would be able to rest. But who would have thought that the power of the battle would be so powerful that even the spell formation would be broken? Were they even human? They were only able to unleash 1% of their power, but they were still able to cause such a huge commotion. Why didn't they just die? Bai Zhong hurriedly went to repair the spell formation, and after that, he set up a few more protective spell formations before departing. He was just about to continue spectating when he heard a burst of curses erupting from the bottom of the tower. Only then did he realize that the ripple had already disappeared. Bai Zhong had no choice but to grit his teeth and endure his cries of discontent as he flew over to repair the image. Only then did he continue to spectate the battle with an aggrieved expression. He was supposed to be a responsible guardian of the restricted area. So why did so many mishaps occur today? Why did he attract so much curses? Not only were the trial takers displeased with him, but even the spectating students were also displeased with him. Oh, now that he thought about it, it seemed like the mighty figures of the Immortal Spirit Tower were also displeased with him, and the celestial Thearcha's voice was also tinged with displeasure. The more Bai Zhong thought about this, the more frustrated he became. What had he done wrong? Bai Zhong was so tired and he really wanted to retire. On the 98th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Xing Tian panted heavily as he stood on the ground, and the crimson-black axe in his hand was showing signs of crumbling. Enlin half knelt to the ground. Using the 100 swords and divine flames at the same time had almost depleted all of his energy. Who would have thought that you would be able to withstand my attack, which was a fusion of the Tao of Slaughter and Abyss? You are indeed the most exceptional cultivator I have ever seen in the Immortal Spirit Tower. However, this is the end of it. A hint of approval appeared on Xing Tian's face as he swung his giant axe toward Enlin again. Enlin was unable to evade this attack, as it was simply too fast and too powerful. An indescribably terrifying aura crashed into Enlin's chest with no impediment. The power of slaughter and the power of engulfment tore at Enlin's body relentlessly. Enlin was blasted into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower, and his body was plastered tightly against the wall as the terrifying power ravaged his body. Heaven and earth were stained red and black again. All the students had their hearts in their throats at this moment. They were all a little disappointed to see Enlin being struck by that attack without putting up any resistance. If they could, they would also like to witness Enlin become the first student in history to pass level 98 of the Immortal Spirit Tower. The energy gradually dissipated, and the figure that was plastered tightly against the wall slowly became visible. However, what appeared before everyone's eyes was not a collapsed figure. Enlin was still standing. He slowly made his way toward Xing Tian, and his footsteps were a little unsteady, but his body was still as firm as ever, as if he were an invincible god. Xing Tian took a deep breath as his voice was filled with incredulity. Impossible! How are you still able to stand after taking my full-force attack head-on? Why? Because he had thick skin, of course. Of course, Anlin wasn't going to give him that answer. He smiled faintly and looked at Xing Tian disdainfully. His voice was filled with confidence as he said in a clear voice, "Why? Because I am the war god." Chapter 609. Because you're the war god? Xing Tian, who was referred to as the war god of the ancient celestial court, faltered slightly before murmuring to himself, "That's right." Anlin replied with a serious expression, but he added in his heart, "I'm the man who owns the war god system." Ha 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 ha! Xing Tian suddenly chortled with glee as boundless battle intent erupted from his body again. Only by remaining undefeated can one be called a war god, but you're going to be defeated by me. He made an ancient seal with his hands, and the dark abyss on the ground suddenly surged to form a shadow vortex. Abyssal gravity. Boom! An extremely terrifying gravitational force erupted from the darkness on the ground. Anlin felt as if his entire body was about to be sucked into the darkness as his muscles and bones creaked and creaked under the immense force. The gravitational force emanating from the abyss was extremely terrifying, but Anlin was still standing. Xing Tian gripped his hand, and a crimson axe imbued with boundless killing intent materialized before flying toward Anlin. Anlin drew lightning from his fingertips, and a bolt of golden void lightning imbued with the power to destroy space crashed toward Xing Tian's head. In the blink of an eye, Xing Tian's crimson axe pierced through space and struck the bolt of golden lightning, instantly shattering it before crashing down upon Anlin. Anlin made no attempt to evade. In reality, he was unable to evade Xing Tian's attack in the face of the terrifying abyssal gravity. The crimson axe fell upon Anlin's chest, and Anlin made no attempt to parry it. Instead, he relied on his thick skin to unleash a fist upon Xing Tian's handsome face. Boom! Anlin was knocked flying by the crimson axe, and Xing Tian was also knocked back a few steps by Anlin's fist. A fist imprint appeared on his face, and blood seeped from the corner of his lips. Anlin stood up again, panting heavily, but his eyes were extremely bright, and his battle intent was still as high as ever. Xing Tian's lips twitched, and he pounced toward Anlin again as his crimson axe fell with an enraged roar. Anlin also transformed into a man of few words, and he swung his fist toward Xing Tian's handsome face with golden light revolving around it. Rumble! Anlin was knocked flying by the crimson axe again, and his body crashed into the wall of the immortal spirit tower like a cannonball, causing the spell formation to tremor violently. Xing Tian was also knocked dizzy by the punch and fell to the ground. "Why are you still slapping my face?" Xing Tian was both shocked and enraged as he rubbed his pretty face that was about to swell up. Anlin looked at him speechlessly. "It's none of your business where I hit you. F***ck. Xing Tian cursed as he swung his crimson axe toward Anlin. In fact, after the two of them had gone through two earth-shattering battles, they had already run out of energy, so they could no longer unleash those earth-shattering spells. Xing Tian might have more energy left, but Anlin's skin was thick. Just like that, the two of them began to fight hand-to-hand again. The battle scene was extremely tragic. Anlin was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. No matter how fierce the attack was, he could stand up again. Outside the immortal spirit tower, thousands of students were watching with rapt attention and passion. Some of them had even unconsciously clenched their fists as they stared at the indestructible figure on the screen with scorching reverence on their faces. Even a lazy bum like Tang Shiman's blood was boiling with excitement. Baizhong was also watching intently. Anlin's battle had truly struck a chord in his heart. That powerful physique, that unyielding battle intent. He had thought that Enlin was biting off more than he could chew, but thinking back now, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. Just as everyone's attention was focused on the battle between the two war gods, on the 84th level, Su Qianyun, who had already passed the trial, stood rooted to the spot with a blank expression. She pouted as she murmured to herself, "Huh? How am I supposed to get out of here? Where's that grandpa? What should I do now?" She looked around at the empty space around her, but there was nothing she could do. Her power had been restricted, so she was unable to break through the immortal spirit tower's protective barrier and could only remain trapped within. Su Qianyun heaved a forlorn sigh as she continued to stare blankly into space while grumbling to herself. "Achoo!" Baizhong suddenly sneezed. Is someone thinking about me?" He thought to himself with a perplexed expression before shaking that thought aside as he continued to watch the battle unfold on the 98th level with excitement and anticipation. The battle between Enlin and Xing Tian had already progressed to the climax of melee combat. In order to conserve his energy, Xing Tian had even withdrawn his abyssal domain and crimson axe as he swung his fists toward Enlin. This was a slap to the face. As for what vendetta he had against Enlin, everyone could see that Xing Tian's face was now swollen like a pig's head. Thump thump thump, bang bang bang, clatter clatter clatter, puff puff puff. Enlin launched a fist toward Xing Tian's eye, while Xing Tian launched a fist toward Enlin's face. Both of them stumbled back a few steps in a daze. Xing Tian felt like his vision was a little blurry, and he pointed at Enlin with an enraged expression. "Aren't you going to slap my face? Why are you attacking my eye now?" Enlin shook his slightly dizzy head and replied with an apologetic expression, "You hit me in the eye? Sorry, I didn't notice." After saying that, he clenched his fist again and put on a punching posture. Again? Xing Tian was a little flustered for some reason upon hearing this. He looked at Enlin with a serious expression, and he could sense the boundless battle intent emanating from Enlin's body. This was indeed the potential that a war god should possess. At this point, Xing Tian had no choice but to admit that Enlin really was a formidable foe. He turned to look at Enlin's handsome face again. It had been bashed so many times, but it still wasn't swollen. This wasn't fair. Why was Enlin still unscathed even though his face had been disfigured? Xing Tian pointed at Enlin and asked in a cold voice, "What kind of constitution do you have? Could it be that you've received the inheritance of the Xianwu, or that you possess the bloodline of the Xianwu or the Xianwu?" His words echoed the question in everyone's mind. Enlin's chest constricted upon hearing this, and he raised his head with a serious expression. "I have the body of the war god." Xing Tian's lips twitched. "Are you trying to fool me again? Is your obsession with the war god that strong?" Enlin replied with a resigned expression, "I'm not lying to you. No one believed the truth these days. All right, let's decide the final victor now." Xing Tian didn't waste any more words as he began to circulate all of his power. He knew that he couldn't drag this out any longer. Enlin's body was far more powerful than he had anticipated, and a battle of attrition was clearly not going to work. He had to use his most powerful attack to end this battle as quickly as possible. Crimson energy enshrouded his hands as an inky black spear appeared in his hands. Boundless abyssal aura erupted forth in a frenzy as the spear that was imbued with all of Xing Tian's power appeared. Enlin's heart jolted as an extremely powerful sense of impending doom swept through his entire body. Abyssal spear. Xing Tian stepped forward, and his body was as fast as lightning as the abyssal spear in his hands shot forth like a bolt of black lightning before instantly striking Enlin's chest. Enlin's fist was enshrouded with a golden light as he launched another punch toward Xing Tian's face. Crack, the black spear struck Enlin's chest, upon which an extremely sharp screeching sound erupted, as if it were trying to puncture his entire heart. At the same time, Enlin's golden fist also landed on Xing Tian's swollen face. Boom! Boundless abyssal power of darkness once again filled the entire space. All of the students outside the immortal spirit tower were greeted by the sight of a black screen. When the image appeared again, it was a scene of both of them lying on the ground. Who had won? Thousands of students' eyes widened, and they were so nervous that they forgot to breathe. Chapter 6:10. Deathly silence ensued outside the immortal spirit tower. Everyone held their breath as they stared at the screen. Some students even had sweat on their palms. Bai Zhong poked his head out and concentrated on the battle on the 98th level. Under everyone's gaze, a figure moved. The thousands of students felt a wave of disappointment in their hearts because the figure that was slowly standing up was the war god of the ancient celestial court, Xing Tian. However, before they could be disappointed for long, another figure stood up. This scene caused some of the students to exclaim loudly. Enlin also stood up. Xing Tian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and looked at Enlin's chest. There was a hole in his clothes, and a colorful light was flowing around where the abyss spear had pierced through. He was a little confused. I can't even pierce through this? Is it really that terrifying? The body of the war god won't be broken so easily. A smug smile appeared on Enlin's face. It's my turn now. As he spoke, a golden lotus appeared on his forehead again, and he quickly rushed toward Xing Tian before launching a golden fist toward him. Damn it, what a fast speed! Xing Tian didn't have the time to dodge or block at all, and he was sent flying by Enlin's punch before rolling on the ground. Actually, it wasn't that Enlin was very fast, but rather that Xing Tian had almost exhausted all of his energy. He no longer had any energy left to dodge or counterattack. After Xing Tian was blasted to the ground, Enlin followed up with another attack. He rode on Xing Tian's body and suppressed his movement. His fists were shrouded in golden light as they continuously landed on Xing Tian's face that was no longer handsome. Boom, 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 waves of terrifying energy blasts caused space to tremble, accompanied by Xing Tian's miserable cries. The scene was extremely cruel. Outside the immortal spirit tower, everyone stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes, unable to come to their senses for a long time. It was clearly Xing Tian who stood up first, but why did the battle instantly become one-sided? God's defenses are way too insane. Look at his body, there isn't even a single wound on it. How terrifying! Not only that, but his stamina is also very good. He can still use such a strong force even now. I think Enlin is going to have a new nickname. Black Tortoise Sage? I think Taoist Priest Turtle can do it too. Make it easier to understand. Am I the only one who feels sorry for Xing Tian? What has become of his handsome face? Sigh. War god Xing Tian is indeed very powerful, but it's a pity that he met a freak. The celestial Dharch, who was observing from the shadows, couldn't help but rub his brows. That scene was so tragic that he couldn't bear to look at it. Xing Tian was the war god of a generation after all. He was such a lofty existence, yet he was being pressed to the ground by Enlin. Perhaps it was just as a certain student had said. Xing Tian was very strong, but he had met a freak, a player that couldn't be measured with common sense. Fist after fist landed on Xing Tian's head like a violent storm, causing him to feel waves of pain. He knew that he had lost. He no longer had the strength to fight back, nor did he have the strength to stand up again. He was too tired. Suddenly, he thought of how his defeat this time was so similar to the last time he was defeated. Both of them were exhausted. Was this fate? Rumble! A burst of golden light exploded, and Xing Tian's divine intent body could no longer hold on, and it began to slowly dissipate. Enlin stopped his attacks and panted heavily as he looked down at the man beneath him with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, I've offended you, Senior Xing Tian. Xing Tian was just about to speak when a smile appeared on Enlin's face again. However, I've won this battle. Let's see if you can still flex now. Xing Tian. The words that Xing Tian was about to say died in his throat. There didn't seem to be any point in being polite to this B***starred. He had initially wanted to say that he had only won a wisp of his divine intent, so there was nothing to be smug about. However, he didn't say this in the end. Because a loss was a loss. He, the war god Xing Tian, had never lost before, but he could afford to lose. You've won. Your aptitude is the most powerful I've ever seen. Xing Tian thought about it for a moment before admitting with a smile. And Lin felt like it was time to compliment each other. Heh. You're not bad yourself. You should be proud of yourself for forcing me to this extent. Xing Tian. Could this B***starred have a proper conversation? He really wanted to beat him up. What to do? Sigh, it was a pity that Xing Tian had already lost the ability to fight. Even though you've defeated me, you're not the war god yet, so don't get too cocky. If you want to become the war god of the Celestial Court, you'll have to defeat the current war god of the Celestial Court, True Lord Erlang. You're still far from that. Xing Tian felt like he should put Lin down a little so that he wouldn't get too cocky. To his surprise, Lin didn't show any negative emotions upon hearing this. Instead, a smile appeared on his face. Why should I compete with True Lord Erlang for the War God title? I'm the War God to begin with. Xing Tian. I've never seen such a shameless person. Lin heaved a faint sigh. Why don't you believe me? That's right, the name of my divine body is too simple and violent. Sigh, I'll change my name in the future. Xing Tian didn't quite understand what Lin was muttering to himself. By the way, Senior Xing Tian, where's your inheritance? What inheritance are you planning to give me? Lin asked expectantly. Xing Tian faltered slightly upon hearing this. Inheritance? He really didn't seem to have considered this question, as he had never thought that he would lose. Lin's expression instantly darkened upon seeing Xing Tian's confused and contemplative expression. Don't tell me you don't want to give it to me? Are you not satisfied yet? It was already so intense, and you're still not satisfied? What else do you want me to do? Lin's voice rose significantly as he spoke. He recalled the fear of being dominated by a heartless immortal in the past. Not satisfied yet? The corners of Xing Tian's mouth twitched again. What the hell was going on in this student's head? Wasn't it obvious whether he was satisfied or not? He had already collapsed from exhaustion, and the last wisp of energy in his body had been sucked dry, so of course he was satisfied. Wait, he seemed to have gotten the wrong idea. That wasn't the problem now. Xing Tian cleared his throat. How about this? My divine intent is limited, so I can only teach you one spell technique from either the Tao of Slaughter or the Tao of Abyss. Which one do you want to learn? Lin thought about it for a moment and realized that the Tao of Slaughter didn't seem to suit his gentlemanly demeanor, so he replied, Choose the Tao of Abyss. Xing Tian nodded. All right, seeing as you have such astonishing aptitude, I won't hold anything back. You can choose any one of the three most powerful spell techniques of the Tao of Abyss. The domain of fear of the abyss can affect the minds of living beings and drag them into a boundless abyss of fear. This is a type of spiritual attack. The gravity of the abyss can exert an extremely powerful gravitational force on all living beings within its area of effect. The flash spear of the abyss has extremely powerful offensive power. You should be familiar with all three spell techniques, so choose one. Lin was indeed familiar with all three, and he wanted all of them. Didn't he say he wasn't going to hold anything back? Why didn't he give all three of them to him? Lin muttered to himself before seriously considering this option. The domain of fear of the abyss was similar to a spell technique that could intimidate weaker living beings. It was extremely effective against weaker living beings and was a great flexing tool. However, he felt like it was a little similar to his divine might technique, so he decided against it. After that was the gravity of the abyss. If he used this spell technique well, it would definitely be very powerful. As for the flash spear of the abyss, Lin didn't lack powerful offensive spell technique. I'll take the gravity of the abyss. Enlin pondered momentarily before making his choice. All right. Xing Tian pointed a finger at Enlin's glabella, and the inheritance regarding the gravity of the abyss flowed into Enlin's mind like a tidal wave. Enlin was ecstatic to receive the inheritance regarding the gravity of the abyss. Xing Tian's combat prowess was limited, so he was unable to unleash the true power of the gravity of the abyss. The gravity of the abyss was actually gravity. Powerful beings could even create a black hole that could engulf all things upon reaching the pinnacle. What a great spell technique! Enlin smacked his lips with satisfaction. Xing Tian was also quite smug upon seeing Enlin's expression. Now you know how powerful the Tao of the Abyss is, right? Enlin nodded with gratitude. Thank you for your inheritance, senior. Enlin will never forget it. Alright, there's no need to be so polite. Work hard and drag Yang Jian down from his position as the war god of the celestial court as soon as possible. Xing Tian waved a hand. Enlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Why? That way, the story of you defeating me will sound better. Otherwise, people will think that I lost to a brat who isn't even a war god. Xing Tian was quite honest about this matter. He didn't hide anything from Ling Xian. Enlin blinked with a solemn expression. Senior, I really am a war god. Xing Tian didn't understand why Enlin was still flexing at a time like this. His body began to slowly dissipate before merging back into the immortal spirit tower. This battle finally drew to a conclusion with Xing Tian's defeat. Chapter 6:11. Within the rippling image, Xing Tian's body slowly dissipated before completely disappearing. There was only a handsome man in a flowing white robe standing in the image. All of the students were a little dazed as they stared blankly at the man, feeling like he was even more tall and powerful than before. Enlin really won? Am I dreaming? It looks like he really did win. Xing Tian lost. I know God and his bad *SS, but he has once again given me a new level of respect for him. My God. This is a new record. God has set a new record for the Immortal Spirit Tower trial. We are witnessing the rise of a new legend. This trial was definitely worth it. All of the students discussed among themselves with enthusiasm, and even Tang Shimin couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Perhaps I should set a higher target? Maybe I should try to pass level 81 next year? Tang Shimin suddenly suggested. Xian Yuanqing turned to Tang Shimin and couldn't help but interject. Senior student Tang, you can set a higher target for your dreams. That way, you'll have more motivation. Is that so? I feel like my target is too high. If I can't achieve it anyway, I might as well not do it. Tang Shimin clearly had a different opinion. Then at least set Su Qianyun as your target. She passed level 84. So can't you set a target to pass level 84? Xian Yuanqing suggested. I can't. Sister Su Qianyun has a true Yin body, exceptional aptitude, and she's already at the half-step soul formation stage. This target is a bit too high. Tang Shimin shook his head. Xian Yuanqing was speechless upon hearing this. He felt like he had figured out why Tang Shimin was such a lazy bum. A thought suddenly occurred to him. Didn't Su Qianyun already pass level 84? Why is she still on level 84? Tang Shimin also turned to look at the rippling image. On level 84, the beautiful celestial maiden was standing silently on the spot with a resentful expression on her face. Could it be that the guardian of the restricted area has forgotten? To be honest, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it as well, Tang Shimin speculated. Xian Yuanqing. I hate to admit it, but it's very likely that Senior Baizhong has forgotten about this. Baizhong appeared on the 98th level and looked at Enlin with a complicated expression. He tried to calm himself down and said with a smile, Congratulations, Enlin. You've successfully passed level 98 and broken the record of Xiaoxian United University. I'll announce your achievements to the entire university tomorrow. Fame is not important. I don't lack it. And Lin waved his hand indifferently. Bai Zhong. He cleared his throat and continued, because you broke the record, the school will reward you with something very valuable. That reward is something that even I am envious of, and Lin waved his hand. That's not important. I don't lack money. I just want to ask, can you go up to the 99th floor now? After all, my goal is to break through this immortal spirit tower. Bai Zhong's heart convulsed. Why was this student so infuriating? You can, but the 99th floor is a little special. You can consume a pill to recover to your peak condition before proceeding with the challenge. I'll remove the restriction on your storage ring first, Bai Zhong suggested. And Lin felt like this was a very thoughtful suggestion. Even though he hadn't sustained any injuries during his battle against Xing Tian, he had expended all of his energy, so it was time for him to recover to his peak condition. He pulled out a blood spirit pill from his storage ring and swallowed it before beginning to meditate. Bai Zhong heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at Lin meditating in silence, and an indescribable sense of elation welled up in his heart. After all, the Celestial Court had produced a top-notch prodigy. As a member of the Celestial Court, he was very happy to see such an exceptional student. Following the conclusion of this legendary battle, his heart also began to calm down as he thought of something else. That's right. There seemed to be 3 other trial takers in the middle of the trial. Bai Zhong suddenly came to his senses, and cold sweat began to pour down his face. He was the manager of the restricted area, and he had neglected them for so long. Bai Zhong immediately unleashed his divine sense, and his expression immediately shifted as he traveled through space to the 84th level. Why did you only get here now? Su Qianyun looked at Bai Zhong with a resentful expression. I thought I'd been abandoned. Bai Zhong hurriedly offered words of consolation. I'm sorry, I had some urgent business to take care of. What urgent business? Su Qianyun looked at Bai Zhong with a slightly frustrated expression. Well, Bai Zhong was a little conflicted. There were images of him and Su Qianyun on the rippling screen, and there were voices as well, so the other students were most likely aware of what had happened. If he were to lie through his teeth again, his reputation might really be ruined. Oh wait. His reputation had already been ruined in order to spectate Lin's battle. He had neglected all of the other trial takers. This was already a very serious F***king crime. Bai Zhong felt extremely depressed. He was a loyal manager of the restricted area, but his reputation had been ruined just like that. Ahem. The urgent business is, I was spectating the battle between Lin and Xing Tian. As you know, their battle was very exciting. Tui. It's just that their battle was very dramatic and would affect the stability of the Immortal Spirit Tower, so I went to the 98th level to maintain order. Bai Zhong explained. Su Qianyun. Su Qianyun stared at Bai Zhong with her dreamy blue eyes, but her exquisite features remained completely expressionless. Bai Zhong was instantly struck by a sense of immense pressure. Su Qianyun fell silent for a moment before speaking. I had thought that you were a very responsible grandfather, but it looks like I was wrong. Crack. Bai Zhong felt as if he could hear his own heart shattering. What was it like to be looked down upon by a student that he admired? That feeling simply made him want to vomit blood. His body swayed slightly, as if he was about to collapse. All of the pent-up emotions that had been building up in his heart were about to explode. To think that you would forget everything else just to spectate Lin's battle. You sure are an interesting grandfather. You're not a serious and old-fashioned person, but you're a person who would become engrossed in the things that you like. You're not bad at all. A faint smile appeared on Su Qianyun's face. The light of the sun shone down upon her flawless features, and her smile was extremely mesmerizing. Bai Zhong was dumbstruck once again. In that instant, he felt as if he had seen an angel. Engrossed in the things that he liked was very interesting. This was the first time that he had heard someone speak of his faults in such a manner. Furthermore, from the sincerity in her voice, There was no hint of deception or perfunctory expression on her face. Tears suddenly welled up in Bai Zhong's eyes. For some reason, his wounded and wronged heart was suddenly healed. Good child, I'll take you out." Bai Zhong's voice trembled slightly. "All right." Su Qianyun nodded with a smile before asking, "Unlin won that battle, right?" Bai Zhong faltered slightly upon hearing this. "How did you know?" It's because he's so powerful. I'm sure he'll be able to do it. Can you tell me about his battle?" Su Qianyun spoke in a mellow voice with a faint smile. What an adorable girl! Bai Zhong's heart melted at the sight of her. He nodded with a benevolent expression. All right. Come with me first, and I'll tell you everything." Chapter 6:12. Just as Bai Zhong was happily escorting Su Qianyun out of the tower and recounting the battle between Enlin and Xing Tian, Su Xiaolan half knelt to the ground on the 96th level and panted heavily. She had already defeated the enlightened Dark River on the 96th level, but she had also sustained severe injuries and was on the brink of unconsciousness. As for why she hadn't fainted, that was because she wanted to witness Enlin's battle again, so she forced herself to stay conscious. "Senior Bai Zhong, where are you? Hurry up and come out!" Su Xiaolan yelled in an extremely impatient voice. However, everything around her was extremely quiet, as if she were standing in an empty tower. Su Xiaolan. She flicked a finger, and a stream of black liquid flowed over her fingertip before transforming into different forms. This was the Dark River spell technique that she had obtained from the enlightened Dark River on this level, and it was an extremely high-level water-type spell technique. This was quite a good reward for her. She had initially been in a good mood, and she was planning to witness Enlin's battle after she got out of the tower. However, she discovered that no one was here to escort her out. She stood on the 96th level in a daze and forced herself to stay conscious. Her good mood had been completely ruined. After escorting Su Qianyun out of the tower, Bai Zhong suddenly slapped his forehead as he recalled that there were still 2 other women remaining in the Immortal Spirit Tower. Thank God he had discovered this in time. He hurriedly entered the Immortal Spirit Tower again to fetch Su Xiaolan. After being healed by Su Qianyun, Bai Zhong was no longer as frustrated by Su Xiaolan's complaints. Instead, he admitted his mistake and apologized in an extremely sincere manner. Su Xiaolan was a little confused by Bai Zhong's reaction. Was this still the same old, long-winded old man? It couldn't be fake, could it? She was too embarrassed to say anything else, so she could only swallow a blood spirit pill before sitting down to meditate. The 97th floor was covered in frost. Sharp icicles floated in the air, emitting a dense chill. Even the void seemed to be frozen. A man in a suit of red armor with his features obscured appeared, and he stabbed a flaming spear through Lu Qianhuan's chest. The scorching heat emanating from the spear made it appear as if it were the sun. I still lost in the end. A hint of disappointment appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face. Don't be discouraged. You can be said to be the most monstrously talented student in the Celestial Court. Even Yang Jian might not have your potential back then. It's a pity that your realm has not stabilized yet. Otherwise, you might really be able to defeat me. The man retracted his spear. His voice was hoarse, but his tone was filled with admiration. A beautiful smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face, but there was a hint of melancholy in her voice. The most freakishly talented? That's because you haven't seen the battle above, and the battle below. A puzzled expression appeared on the man's face. However, Lu Qianhuan had already slowly closed her eyes and fainted. Not long after, an old man appeared before Lu Qianhuan and hurriedly teleported her away using a spell technique. At this moment, Enlin was the only one left in the Immortal Spirit Tower. He had already broken all the records in the history of the Immortal Spirit Tower, and he was preparing to challenge the final level. The battle hadn't even begun yet, but news of Enlin breaking all the records in the Immortal Spirit Tower had already spread throughout the entire campus. As for the source of the news, It was naturally the gossipy fifth-year students who were spreading the news. Due to the fact that this was an extremely sensational event, the news spread very quickly, and in the end, almost everyone was aware of it. It was exactly because of this that many students wanted to go to the Immortal Spirit Tower to spectate the battle even though they were still in class. No **T. This was a battle that would go down in history. This was like an international superstar holding an extravagant concert in the mortal world, but the students were still in class. What were they supposed to do? Of course, many students couldn't resist the urge to skip class. Thus, while Lin was still meditating, a steady stream of students began to gather around the Immortal Spirit Tower. Soon, there were over 10,000 people. Big brother, the Sword Dao teacher wants us to demonstrate our swordsmanship in front of the class during the next class. Is it really okay for us to suddenly skip class now? Yao Xiu asked with a hint of unease. That's our idol's final battle. We can't miss it no matter what. Yao Mingxi replied with a determined expression. If the teacher asks, we'll just say that we suddenly attained enlightenment in the Tao of the sword, so we went to find a place to digest our sword intent. You can do that? Yao Xiu's eyes widened as if she was seeing her big brother for the first time. But wouldn't it be too much of a coincidence for both of us to attain enlightenment at the same time? She suddenly became a little concerned. A faint smile appeared on Yao Mingxi's face. Are you stupid? I've attained enlightenment, so I have to explore a new Tao of the sword. I need someone to feed me techniques, right? That person is you. Yao Xiu felt as if she had been enlightened. That's brilliant. What are you guys talking about? A voice suddenly sounded beside them. We're talking about how to lie to the teacher. Brother, you. Yao Mingxi turned around, but his expression froze before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. Yao Xiu's body trembled in fright at the sight of the man beside her, and an expression of shock and horror appeared on her face. Teacher? That's right, the man beside her was none other than their Sword Dao teacher, Sword Immortal Dong Yi. Sword Immortal Dong Yi looked at the two of them with a hint of a smile on his face. What a coincidence. I was just about to come over and say hi to you two when I heard something terrible. Yao Xiu and Yao Mingxi's legs had turned to jelly, and their minds were in a complete mess. They couldn't even speak. *CK. Lying to their teacher right in front of him? They were definitely screwed. Teacher, we were wrong. My sister and I will go back to class immediately. Yao Mingxi tried his best to calm his emotions before hurriedly apologizing to Yao Xiu. Hey, don't leave now that you're here. Sword Immortal Dong Yi waved his hand. The two of them paled. Don't leave now that you're here? Was he going to execute them on the spot? That class has already been changed to a self-study session, Sword Immortal Dong Yi said. Come and watch this battle with me. I also want to see my idol battle. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiu were shocked again. There was too much information in this sentence, and they were completely dumbfounded. Who would have thought that their teacher would change the Sword Dao class to a self-study session just to spectate this battle? My God! He's a soulmate. Who would have thought that you were also a fan of Lin, teacher? This is great. Yao Mingxi was overjoyed. It was as if he had found another soulmate. No, Lin is not my idol. Sword Immortal Dong Yi shook his head. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiu both faltered upon hearing this. Hee, my idol is that senior on the 99th level. An expression of yearning appeared on Sword Immortal Dong Yi's face. The scorching light in his eyes was something that the two of them had never seen before. It was the same light that they were looking at Lin with. What kind of immortal could evoke such an expression on their teacher's face? No one had ever seen the immortal on the 99th level before, as no one had ever made it to the 99th level. However, their teacher knew of that immortal's identity, so that immortal had to have some sort of connection with their teacher. The two of them couldn't help but look forward to meeting that mysterious immortal. Lin opened his eyes from his meditation and stretched his body. He held the number 99 that Bai Zhong had given him and stepped onto a territory that no one had ever set foot in before. He didn't know that his audience had already swelled to over 10,000 people. Not only were there students, but there were also teachers. Creak, the door opened, and Enlin stood rooted to the spot with a dumbstruck expression. He saw an opponent that was completely beyond his expectations. Chapter 6:13. Enlin was a little skeptical. How could this man be his opponent? This was a man with a head of long silver hair and a cold expression on his face. He wore a purplish-golden robe and exuded a sense of calmness. It was as if everything between heaven and earth revolved around him. That's right, the man standing before Enlin was one of the 4 emperors of the Celestial Court aside from the Celestial Dharch, Emperor Ziwei of the North. Enlin was a little dumbstruck. Why was his opponent on the 99th level Ziwei Emperor? He was a peerless expert who was known as the Master of the Stars, the Wanxiang Grandmaster. He was a master of all immortal spells and was known as the Grandmaster of Immortal Spells. A mighty figure like this was his opponent. What a joke! You, Senior, aren't you still alive? Why are you in the Immortal Spirit Tower? Enlin finally recovered from his shock and asked with incredulity. A warm smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face. Who told you that only dead immortals can serve as trial targets in the Immortal Spirit Tower? I can also split off a wisp of my divine intent to stay here. Course, I have to give everyone a surprise on the final level. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath. This wasn't AF King surprise, this was AF King shock. Emperor Ziwei extended a hand in a very amicable manner and made an inviting gesture. Let's cut to the chase, Enlin. I'm sure all of the students and teachers outside are looking forward to our battle, so let's begin. Begin? Was he really going to fight? Enlin was a little intimidated. After all, Emperor Ziwei was one of the most powerful beings in the Celestial Court. He was a Tao integration stage true god. Even on the Tai Chu continent, he would be a super bad *SS. The reason why the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas was so eager to nurture a Tao integration stage mighty figure was because they wanted to become one of the first-rate powers on the Tai Chu continent. Only by nurturing a Tao integration stage mighty figure would they have the right to speak on the Tai Chu continent. From this, one could see just how powerful a Tao integration stage mighty figure was. And now, Enlin actually wanted to exchange blows with a powerhouse of this level. Don't you think he's a coward? Emperor Ziwei seemed to have read Enlin's mind, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Don't worry, I'm just a wisp of divine intent. I'm not as scary as you think I am. Heh, you're just a wisp of divine sense, but my power is also suppressed by 100 times. The fact that he was placed on the last level of the Immortal Spirit Tower meant that he was no ordinary being. If he didn't hold back and accidentally killed him, who was he going to complain to? Why don't you get Senior Bai Zhong to remove the restriction on my power, and I'll fight you again? Enlin suggested in a low voice. Emperor Ziwei. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, everyone fell into a daze at the sight of the trial targets on the 99th level. A true god overseeing the 99th level, this was something that they had never anticipated before. Sword Immortal Dong Yi smiled and said, How is it? You didn't expect this, did you? I'm Master Ziwei's disciple, but I'm a good-for-nothing. I haven't even broken through to the Return to Void stage. I'm here to observe my master in action. Even though it's only a wisp of divine sense, the spell techniques imbued within it are extremely profound, and even I have benefited immensely from it. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiu nodded blankly upon hearing this. They were so shocked that they were at a complete loss for word. Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, and the others were also at a loss for words as they stared at the rippling screen in astonishment. It was quite clear that this final boss had given everyone quite a fright. He's going to fight a true god? Holy Mother of God! And a living true god at that. What's going on with Emperor Ziwei? Is he here to bully little kids? Holy sh*t, should we get away from here? I'm scared that I'll be killed by the shockwaves of the battle. This last level is completely a suicide question. What's the point of fighting? Emperor Ziwei was a mythical figure in the celestial court. He was a true divine emperor. Even a wisp of Emperor Ziwei's divine sense was unimaginably terrifying. In the eyes of everyone else, there wasn't much suspense in a battle of this caliber. In reality, Enlin was also thinking the same thing. He was confident, but he really couldn't muster up any confidence against an opponent of this caliber. Ding dong! At this moment, a crisp chime sounded in his mind. Enlin was extremely familiar with this voice. If he had a choice, he would rather never hear this despicable voice again. However, in the end, he still succumbed to the system's tyrannical power and silently opened the system in his mind. Detected that the host has chickened out, hereby assigning the following special mission. Display the true colors of the war god frowny face, defeat Emperor Ziwei's divine sense and rub it against the ground. Mission success. 1 special spell technique lottery ticket will be awarded. Mission failure. Host's clothes will be completely transparent for 1 year. A note: this mission cannot be declined. Enlin, display the true colors of the war god? So the system had already recognized him as the war god. Just thinking about it made him a little happy. Happy my A**s. How the F***ck could he be happy about this? What kind of F***king mission was this? Rub Emperor Ziwei against the ground? If the system was that bad *SS, why didn't it just ascend to the heavens? And that mission penalty. Host's clothes will be completely transparent for 1 year? That was F***king forced nude running. That had to be it. Enlin was so enraged that he couldn't help but burst into laughter. If he really failed this mission, he would be treated as a pervert. If that happened, he would have to find a cave to live with the Gundams, huh? Thinking about it that way, it seemed like the Gundams did have some good points. At the very least, they wouldn't despise him for being naked. Emperor Ziwei's eyes lit up at the sight of Enlin's sudden laughter. Mr. Enlin, have you finally thought things through? Let's begin. Enlin came to his senses, and his laughter faded as he stared directly at Emperor Ziwei. Are you sure you can't let me recover my strength before we battle? Emperor Ziwei shook his head with a smile. No, this is the rule of the Immortal Spirit Tower. I believe that Mr. Enlin is not a coward. Come. He had wanted to test out Enlin for a long time, and this was a perfect opportunity for him to do so. Boom. A sonic boom was heard. Enlin's body instantly broke through the sound barrier and appeared before Emperor Ziwei in the blink of an eye. He unleashed his Earth Lotus Supreme skill to its fullest extent, and his fist tore through the air, sweeping up gale force winds as it descended upon Enlin. A smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face. That's more like a battle. Enlin's fist crashed into Emperor Ziwei's face, upon which Emperor Ziwei's body dissipated like a cloud of purple mist. A figure then appeared beside Enlin, and a golden light flashed from his fingertip as he pointed a finger at the side of Enlin's waist. Great golden sun divine finger! Boom! A terrifying power swept forth, and Enlin flew to the side as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. He repressed the discomfort in his body as he hovered in mid-air. He had already finished accumulating his lightning manipulation technique, and an extremely dazzling bolt of golden void lightning appeared before hurtling toward Emperor Ziwei with the help of the lightning amplification technique. The golden void lightning pierced through the air like a sharp golden sword, hurtling toward the purple-robed man's head. Purple Void Bridge. Emperor Ziwei also extended a finger, which glowed with a purple light. There was a purplish-black ball on his fingertip as he pointed a finger toward the golden void lightning. At the same time, another purplish-black ball appeared in front of Enlin. A sense of foreboding welled up in Enlin's heart. The golden void lightning struck the purplish-black ball in front of Emperor Ziwei's fingertip, before suddenly disappearing. In the next instant, the golden void lightning reappeared from the purplish-black ball in front of Enlin before hurtling toward Enlin. Everything had happened far too quickly, and Enlin didn't even have time to unleash his lightning manipulation technique again. Boom! The terrifying golden void lightning struck Enlin's body, and the destructive power within it made him cry out in pain. His body tumbled to the ground as plumes of black smoke rose into the air. Never would he have thought that he would be struck by this type of lightning again after transcending his golden void lightning tribulation. A numbing sensation tore through his entire body, and if it weren't for his body of the war god, a gaping hole would have appeared in his body already. Enlin was a little dumbstruck. Even though he was mentally prepared, he didn't think that he would be unable to even touch Emperor Ziwei's body after just a few exchanges. Chapter 6:14. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, everyone else was a little disappointed to see Enlin being pummeled. After all, his opponent was a Dao integration stage true god, so it was only normal that he couldn't win. Su Xiaolan clenched her fists as she stared intently at the man on the screen with anticipation still shining in her eyes. She knew that Enlin's power definitely wasn't limited to this, and he still had many trump cards that he hadn't used yet. The Celestial Dharch, who was observing from the shadows, was also getting a little more cautious. He wasn't looking at the rippling screen. Instead, he was observing the battle taking place inside the Immortal Spirit Tower. Enlin crawled up from the ground and stared intently at the man on the screen as he tried to come up with a plan. However, Emperor Ziwei wasn't going to let Enlin sit there and think. He stepped forward, and countless black sword intents appeared within the tower before flying toward Enlin like a torrential downpour. The sword intents were simply too dense for Enlin to evade, so he could only rely on his powerful physical body to defend himself. However, his body caved in as soon as it came into contact with the sword intents, upon which he was slammed into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Immediately afterward, he was whipped into a pulp by the countless black sword intents. Boom, 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 boom. The spell formation around the Immortal Spirit Tower tremored violently, and Bai Zhong hurriedly unleashed a spell technique to stabilize the spell formation. The protective spell formation was completely unsuitable for a battle of this caliber, so all he could do now was use his own power to stabilize the spell formation. This was the first time he had done something like this, and his old body really couldn't handle it. Oh, your skin is indeed frighteningly thick. It has already transcended beyond the realm of soul formation stage cultivators. Even return to void stage mighty figures might not be able to match your defensive prowess. As expected of the Patriarch of Immortal Spells, Emperor Ziwei didn't repeat any of his technique. He let loose a cry of surprise as he gripped his hand, upon which a purple and golden hammer appeared in his hand. He immediately brought the hammer down upon Enlin, who was still plastered to the wall. Boom! The air twisted and warped as devastating energy swept forth. Enlin's body suddenly transformed into mist before disappearing on the spot. The power of the purple golden hammer crashed into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower, and a violent explosion erupted, causing the entire tower to tremor slightly. Oh, interesting. This looks like Shou Yang's spell technique, right? An all-encompassing star chart flashed through Emperor Ziwei's eyes, which converged toward a certain spot in the air before making a grabbing motion. A golden cube enveloped a certain space, releasing a boundless suppressive force. Enlin's body was forced out, and a terrifying energy seal started to invade his entire body. Sealing technique? Enlin was startled. Before his power was completely suppressed, he spread open his wings of wind and condensed a four-colored divine flame in his hand. Streams of wind surrounded him as he charged toward the edge of the golden cube. His speed was extremely fast. As the divine flame sword fell, he instantly broke a hole in the golden cube and escaped. In the end, what greeted him was a fist that contained all 5 elements. Rumble! An earth-shattering force swept forth, and Enlin flew through the air like a cannonball before crashing into the wall of the immortal spirit tower again. This scene was so similar. At this moment, Enlin just wanted to shout, "Motherf asterisk Kerr." With such a terrifying gap in power, how could he press Ziwei into the ground and grind her? Keep on dreaming. It was Ziwei who was grinding him into the wall? Following that, countless attacks rained down, whipping the corpses on the walls. Outside the immortal spirit tower, all of the students looked on at the ravaged Enlin with sympathy in their hearts. Some of the female students felt like this was far too cruel, and they had even covered their eyes with their hands. He can't retaliate at all. I feel sorry for Godin. Only now do I realize how painful it is to have high defense, as you'll be tortured for a long time. I don't know why, but I'm so excited to see this. All of the male students silently backed away from the person who had just spoken. Enlin was feeling a little dizzy after being bombarded by one spell technique after another. He finally found a respite, but when he opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that he was preparing to unleash a powerful technique. Emperor Ziwei made an ancient seal with his hands as the projection of a star disk enshrouded the entire 99 levels. Countless stars revolved in the air as the terrifying power of the stars converged before Emperor Ziwei to form a palm imbued with boundless power of the stars. Enlin felt like he was looking at the entire universe at the sight of that palm. He almost pissed himself from fear. This was no joke. Holy F***ck. Was this a F***king invincible technique? Was Emperor Ziwei trying to kill him? Emperor Ziwei really was going to unleash a vicious attack this time. He wanted to see just how thick Enlin's skin was. Galactic Immortal Palm. He unleashed a palm toward Enlin, and heaven and earth instantly dimmed as countless stars shimmered in the night sky. The immortal palm imbued with an extremely terrifying power of stars crashed down upon Enlin's body, and it was as if the entire galaxy had fallen and the stars had been shattered as boundless power tore through the entire space. Boom! At this moment, countless stars exploded, and a terrifying force spread out, crashing into the entire sealed space. Crack! Bam! The defensive spell formation around the immortal spirit tower was shattered again, and Baizhong was also knocked flying by the power of the explosion. The rippling image exploded once again, turning into a puddle of water that appeared in front of everyone. Baizhong was still injecting power into the spell formation to stabilize it, but it was still blasted apart by that fearsome power. He had already worked so hard, so why did this still happen? He felt extremely depressed. All the students. Baizhong hurriedly rushed forward to repair the spell formation and the rippling image. He was extremely familiar with this process. The fearsome power of the stars slowly dissipated, and a figure was already lying on the ground. Su Xiaolan and the others looked at the figure lying on the ground with concern on their faces. Emperor Ziwei made his way toward Enlin as he surveyed the man on the ground with curiosity in his eyes. No matter how thick his skin is, he should have sustained some injuries after being struck by that attack. This looks like. Heaven and earth instantly dimmed before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. Origin energy of the netherworld. 6 strikes of the war god Shadow Tiger. Within the boundless darkness, Enlin's power skyrocketed as he pounced toward Emperor Ziwei with a black energy sword in his hand, which he stabbed toward Emperor Ziwei's heart. Emperor Ziwei remained completely unperturbed by the darkness. His mental state was not something that could be affected by a single instant of darkness. He relied on his fearsome divine sense and reflexes to evade Enlin's attack. However, it was also in that instant that Enlin made a grabbing motion with his other hand. Spatial congealment. At the same time, a black circle appeared under his feet. Abyssal gravity. Spatial congealment and extremely fearsome gravitational force were activated at the same time. Even though this was not enough to completely suppress Emperor Ziwei, it was enough to make him falter momentarily. This momentary pause was the perfect opportunity for Enlin to attack. His black energy sword pierced through the air before puncturing Emperor Ziwei's chest. Chapter 6:15. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, Emperor Ziwei was just making his way toward the collapsed Enlin when the screen suddenly went black. Holy F***ck, why did the screen go black? Where's the manager of the restricted area? What's going on again? Ah, and at the most critical moment too. Senior Baizhong, I hate you. All of a sudden, everyone was enraged. Baizhong's chest constricted, and he almost threw up a mouthful of blood. The entire space had gone black due to Enlin unleashing a spell technique. What the F***ck was wrong with him to be scolded for no reason? He felt like the number of times his heart had been constricted today. If things continued like this, he was probably going to suffer a heart attack. The screen lit up again, and an image appeared. Everyone looked at the scene that appeared once again and unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. Enlin had already stood up, and there was a sharp, inky black energy sword in his hand. The sword was stained with crimson blood, and it was poised to thrust forward. Emperor Ziwei retreated about a dozen meters away with an expression of shock on his face. The purple robe around his chest had been torn open, and blood had stained his robe red. This Emperor Ziwei was injured? Enlin injured Emperor Ziwei. My god. That's way too bad *SS. He's going to shock the world with a single brilliant feat. After being abused for so long, he's finally retaliating. I told you Godin would be able to do it. Even Emperor Ziwei is no match for him. What happened when the screen went black just then? How did Godin do it? It's all Senior Baizhong's fault. Exactly. He can't even do a live broadcast. I'll give him a bad review. Baizhong was high up in the sky, but he could still hear the enraged cries of the crowd down below. Tears immediately streamed down his face as he realized that he had been implicated again, on the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Emperor Ziwei nodded as he looked at the wound on his chest. Who would have thought that you would really be able to injure me? Your decisiveness and timing were very good. What was the name of the mystic technique you used just then? Enlin had only unleashed his origin energy of the netherworld in that instant, and he had already stopped unleashing his spell technique. After attaining initial success in his body of the war god, he could already use the origin energy of the netherworld for a short period of time without any side effects. However, it would expend a lot more energy. My move is called Super Saiyan Tier 2 Body Enhancement, Enlin said in all seriousness. Super Saiyan Level 2 Body Enhancement? Emperor Ziwei stroked his chin and pondered for a moment before nodding in praise. That's a very unique name, and the spell technique is quite good. Lu Qianhuan had already woken up and was spectating the battle. Since you've already injured me, let's end our battle here. You've won this battle. After all, you made me bleed first, Emperor Ziwei said with a nod. Naturally, he would not allow Enlin to defeat him completely. After all, such a thing was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It was better to stop here, and then Enlin would have the opportunity to choose a legacy. That's right, he admired Enlin very much, so he decided to give Enlin some benefit. Enlin faltered upon hearing this. Never would he have thought that Emperor Ziwei would concede so easily. Was he planning on letting him? How considerate! He looked at his system to find that the mission hadn't been completed. F***ck. Emperor Ziwei had conceded just like that? Was he trying to force him to run around naked? Enlin shook his head with battle intent surging. Emperor Ziwei, I think we should continue fighting until one of us falls. Emperor Ziwei. Had he heard incorrectly? He had already conceded, but Enlin still wanted to continue? Enlin spoke with a serious expression. I don't need this kind of victory. Of course, he hadn't even crushed Emperor Ziwei into the ground yet, so how could this battle end? However, what he didn't think was that his words would create such a stir among the spectating students and teachers. All of the spectating students and teachers were given a fright by Emperor Ziwei's sudden concession, but there were also some people who understood what Emperor Ziwei was implying. However, what no one thought was that Enlin would reject this method of victory. He didn't need this kind of victory. This sentence reverberated throughout the entire screen, infecting everyone. So, this is the legendary figure of our school? He really didn't bring shame to our United University of Cultivation. A man clenched his fists with tears welling up in his eyes. This is a true powerful being. Only someone as powerful as him would have such a mentality, right? What is a war god? This is a true war god. It's not that he will never be defeated, it's that he has a proud and unyielding will. He doesn't accept this kind of victory, nor is he afraid of defeat. Even if Godin loses this battle, he will still be my idol. I'm going to be his fan for the rest of my life. Xian Yuanqing turned to Tang Shimin in a slow voice. Senior student Tang, have you attained enlightenment? Tang Shimin's breathing accelerated as he spoke with excitement. What is Enlin doing? If he admits that he's won, he'll be able to receive Emperor Ziwei's inheritance. Does he know what kind of opportunity he's just wasted? Xian Yuanqing, Sword Immortal Dong Yi smiled. No wonder the two of you revere classmate Enlin so much. To be honest, even I have to look up to him. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiu's eyes lit up, and they couldn't even hear their teacher's words as they screamed at the screen. An expression of approval also appeared on Bai Zhong's face. He had underestimated Enlin over and over again, and Enlin had shocked him over and over again. Only now did he realize that it was no mere coincidence that Enlin had made it this far. Perhaps aside from Su Qianyun, Enlin was also one of the students he admired. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Emperor Ziwei was also rooted to the spot upon hearing Enlin's words. This was a completely unexpected response. He looked at Enlin with a serious expression, and after a long while, an irrepressible light burst forth from his eyes as he chortled with mirth. Good. This is the true prodigy of our celestial court. Let's continue to battle to our heart's content. Enlin didn't reply. Instead, a golden robe suddenly appeared over his body as countless bolts of golden lightning exploded forth. A paramount aura began to proliferate forth, as if a god were unleashing his divine might, striking fear into the hearts of all onlookers. Enlin's body suddenly disappeared on the spot. Emperor Ziwei put two fingers together before swiping them through the air in front of him. An extremely dazzling silver waterfall instantly slashed out, tearing the void in front of it into two. Emperor Ziwei suddenly turned to look in the other direction, where Enlin's body appeared with a white lightning sword in his hand, which he abruptly slashed down toward him. This was the divine lightning sword that Lu Qianhuan had used during her tribulation transcendence, and it was imbued with peerless sword intent. The space around it screeched as it appeared, and the sword intent made the air around it shimmer with a boundless sharpness as it pulverized everything within its radius. Lightning also flashed under Emperor Ziwei's feet as he retreated like a bolt of lightning. Crackle, a sharp clap of thunder erupted as Emperor Ziwei's robe was torn apart again, but he managed to evade Enlin's sneak attack in the nick of time. At the same time, he unleashed a punch. This punch appeared to be quite mundane, but it was imbued with an extremely fearsome fist technique. Boom! The terrifying power compressed the space around him into a flat sphere. Enlin's entire body caved in from the force of the punch, and a tearing sensation swept through his entire body. His body flew back for over 100 meters before crashing into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Countless spell techniques then hurtled toward him. There were scorching flames, razor-sharp blades of ice, and destructive voodoo poisons. Enlin was pounded into the wall by Emperor Ziwei again. Chapter 6:16. Enlin was in complete despair at this moment. If he didn't unleash his origin energy of the netherworld, he really wouldn't be able to harm Emperor Ziwei. If he couldn't even harm Emperor Ziwei's body, How was he supposed to grind him into the ground? How about, he did what he did to Xing Tian? He could use his thick skin to tire him out and tire him to death? Back when he was struck by the galactic immortal palm, he really did feel like he was going to die. However, he was also astonished by how thick his skin was. He was able to survive Emperor Ziwei's palm, and he had survived it in one piece. So this plan seemed to be working? A relentless barrage of attacks tore at his body, making him writhe in excruciating agony. And Lin howled in pain. It should work, but it was just too painful. The attacks suddenly stopped. And Lin thought that Emperor Ziwei was taking a breather, so he raised his head to look up. F***CK. He's charging up his trump card again. A rainbow spear appeared in Emperor Ziwei's hand. Countless golden symbols flashed past his eyes as an extremely fearsome sharpness converged on the spear. The rainbow light illuminated the spear, making it appear extremely beautiful. However, Lin could see the scenes of two worlds being destroyed within the spear. This was a spell technique imbued with the terrifying power of destruction. This technique is known as the Tao-shattering spear. When I unleashed it at the height of my powers, it could pierce through two worlds and shatter countless Taos. Emperor Ziwei's expression was calm, but his hand trembled uncontrollably, as if he was unable to control this power. The celestial Dharch drew a sharp intake of breath as he flew toward the 99-level Immortal Spirit Pagoda. Has Emperor Ziwei gone insane? How could he use something like this? Isn't he afraid that he'll kill everyone? A faint voice drifted over, as if sensing the celestial Thearcha's arrival. Don't worry, Lin isn't as weak as you think he is. Emperor Ziwei adopted a throwing stance as he spoke in an indifferent voice. Be careful. At this moment, the heavens and earth were like a cage. Lin felt an irresistible force that made it impossible for him to escape. At the same time, a premonition of death that was even more intense than the galaxy immortal palm spread through his entire body, causing every cell in his body to tremble. It was hard to tell if it was fear or some other emotion. Origin energy of the netherworld. Divine fire armor. 4 types of divine flames condensed into an extremely domineering armor. The raging flames were vast and mighty, making him seem like a sovereign of flames. Lin felt that if he didn't defend with all his might, he would definitely be screwed. He was just about to unleash the power of the golden void lightning when Emperor Ziwei's spear had already been hurled. The entire world turned colorful, and a spear containing a terrifying penetrative power pierced towards Lin, leaving a trail in the void that was enough to shatter thousands of Taos. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, the rippling screen had turned into a colorful screen. There were only 7 colors on the screen and nothing else. Lin launched a fist toward the oncoming spear, but the golden fist projection was punctured like tofu before striking the divine fire armor. In the face of the rainbow spear, the 4 divine flames instantly crumbled, as if they had lost the support of the essence of fire. Lin's heart jolted with shock upon seeing this, but he was unable to do anything. He could only look on as the rainbow spear struck his chest, upon which boundless light erupted forth. Ah! He let loose a cry of pain as his body was slammed into the wall by the spear. The terrifying penetrative power of the spear shattered the space around it as heaven and earth screeched. A bone-chilling pain instantly swept through Lin's entire body, and just the shock waves alone were enough to make the spell formation around the Immortal Spirit Tower show signs of cracking. The indestructible body of the divine god of battle finally had a crack on it. Gotcha! The crisp crack was like an announcement of death, and Lin was struck by an indescribable sense of agony. The spear tore through the war god's body before piercing through the void and the walls of the Immortal Spirit Tower, as well as the protective spell formation. It then left a rainbow streak of light in the sky that extended into infinity and beyond. PFFF by Zhong, who was in the process of maintaining the spell formation, was struck by a backlash, and he threw up a mouthful of blood. The rippling screen exploded again, and this time, all of the students and teachers were struck by an indescribably terrifying power. They stared blankly up at the destructive rainbow in the sky, unable to imagine what would happen to Enlin in the face of such a powerful spell technique. Su Xiaolan. Xianyuan Cheng let loose a cry of surprise as he followed along. Su Xiaolan had already leaped onto her sword and flew toward the 99th level. Su Qianyun, Lu Qianhuan, Tang Shimen, and the others also flew toward the 99th level. All of them were worried about Enlin. A series of streaks of light flew toward the top of the Immortal Spirit Tower as all of the students and teachers above the Spirit Nurturing stage flew into the sky. Meanwhile, all of the Dao Body stage cultivators began to yell for Senior Baizhong to show them the rippling screen. "Don't come any closer. It's not safe here, so go back to where you came from. I'll show you the screen right away." Baizhong yelled in a loud voice as he blocked off all of the onlookers. "Are you alright, Grandpa Baizhong?" Su Qianyun asked with a concerned expression. A warm smile appeared on Baizhong's face. "I'm fine. It's just that this battle was more intense than I had anticipated, and I was struck by a backlash. Just give me some time to recover." Since the caretaker of the restricted area had spoken, everyone else could only return to where they were. Baizhong began to repair the spell formation and the rippling screen with a practiced hand. After the screen was restored, it was revealed that Enlin was half kneeling on the ground with blood dripping from his body. Enlin. Su Xiaolan's heart throbbed with pain as she stared at Enlin's figure. She discovered that there was a bloody hole in Enlin's chest. Who would have thought that Enlin's defenses would really be broken? Of course. Didn't you see how terrifying Emperor Ziwei's attack was? What kind of vendetta does he have against Enlin? I feel like Emperor Ziwei is trying to kill Enlin. I also feel like he went too far. If Enlin wasn't this powerful, would he really have been killed? Most of the students were quite disgruntled upon seeing this, and they were all quite critical of Emperor Ziwei. Only the Celestial Dharch was extremely shocked. He was well aware of just how powerful Emperor Ziwei's Dao fragmentary spear was. Even when unleashed through his divine intent, the power of that spear was no less than an attack from a return to void stage mighty figure. But Enlin had only managed to inflict a bloody hole on his body? He had already mentally prepared himself for Enlin's body to be pulverized. One had to realize that Enlin only had 1% of his power at the moment. If he had 100% of his power, then how powerful would his body be? How powerful would his defenses be? The Celestial Dharch recalled what Emperor Ziwei had told him. Enlin wasn't as weak as he had imagined. That's right, Enlin's power had far exceeded his expectations. Perhaps it was time to reconsider Enlin's power. Ziwei had made the right decision to assess Enlin's power. He had been given quite a fright upon doing so. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Enlin clasped a hand over his bleeding chest as he slowly rose to his feet. Who would have thought that a spell technique that expended a third of my power was only able to inflict this much damage on you? An expression of surprise appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. I also didn't think that my body wouldn't be invincible. Emperor Ziwei. The evergreen technique quickly circulated around Enlin's wound to repair his injuries. If that spell used a third of your power, then I'm sorry to tell you. Enlin raised his head and looked directly at Emperor Ziwei with a hint of confidence and arrogance on his face. You can't defeat me. Chapter 6:17. Enlin had spoken his mind, and Emperor Ziwei's expression faltered slightly upon hearing this. Indeed, he wouldn't die even if he were to take a few more hits from a technique of this caliber. You can't defeat me. This was a simple statement, but it was imbued with peerless confidence, as if it were as heavy as a mountain. Without power and unyielding fighting spirit, there was no way he would be able to say something like this. One had to realize that this statement was meant for the Dao integration stage true god, Emperor Ziwei. Sure enough, All of the students outside the Immortal Spirit Tower were astonished by Enlin's aura, and a new wave of diehard fans joined the fray. A joyful smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face as he looked at Enlin. Ha ha! It's been a long time since someone has said something like this to me. Now that I'm hearing it, my blood is starting to boil. Wings of wind appeared on Enlin's back, and he charged toward Emperor Ziwei again. 4 white lightning swords appeared beside him as they whistled through the air toward Emperor Ziwei. You're way too impatient. A faint smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face as he waved a hand through the air, upon which a golden cube barrier enshrouded his entire body. Boom boom boom! The white lightning sword struck the golden cube barrier, causing it to tremor violently. The 4 lightning swords were unable to penetrate Emperor Ziwei's defenses in the end. Their sharpness was thwarted and lightning exploded. Emperor Ziwei turned toward Enlin, and he was just about to speak when he saw the image of a golden eye on Enlin's forehead. Divine Plunder Technique. The flying lightning sword was merely a feint Enlin had used to get closer to Emperor Ziwei, and he was only using it to get within a 100-meter radius of Emperor Ziwei. His true technique was the Divine Plunder Technique. Enlin didn't know if the Divine Plunder Technique would work, but he could only try his luck. Emperor Ziwei was a Tao integration stage mighty figure, as well as the patriarch of immortal spells. As such, he had a limitless arsenal of natural abilities and spell techniques. Enlin didn't want his head to explode, so he could only choose a technique at random. Golden ripples began to proliferate through the golden barrier before enshrouding Emperor Ziwei's body. Enlin was already prepared to make a blind selection, but that thought came to an abrupt halt. That was because the feedback from his spells was not a vast sea of talents or spells. On the contrary, there were only 2 things that he could plunder. One was a combination of boundlessly profound Tao wills, and the other was a mass of energy with extremely strong waves of divine soul. Enlin came to a realization. The target of his plunder wasn't Emperor Ziwei's main body, but rather the divine intent of battle that had separated from his main body. Battle divine sense was originally one, but it could also be divided into 2 parts: battle and divine sense. That boundlessly profound Tao intent was the power of the North Pole Emperor's battle information. The cluster of energy with extremely powerful divine soul fluctuations should be the divine will that supported the existence of this Ziwei. If he could plunder that ball of energy with extremely strong divine soul fluctuations, he should be able to directly destroy Ziwei, right? No. Enlin would not choose that. He hadn't even rubbed Ziwei against the ground yet. I can't let him disappear just like that. In that case, I can only do this, hee. This was the chance to rub Ziwei against the ground. Plunder Tao wills. An invisible ripple pierced through Emperor Ziwei's body, making him feel as if he had lost something in that instant. At this moment, Enlin was already charging toward him, his fist enshrouded in golden light. Dark Cloud Great Void Palm. Emperor Ziwei unleashed a palm strike toward Enlin. Slap. His palm was slapped away by Enlin. Emperor Ziwei's eyes widened, and an expression of uncontrollable shock appeared on his face for the first time. At this moment, Enlin's fist was already hurtling toward his face. Boom! Golden light exploded, and the terrifying power of Enlin's fist crashed into Ziwei's face. Ziwei's body tumbled to the ground, and he threw up a large mouthful of blood as a dazed expression appeared on his face. He was just about to crawl to his feet when Enlin made a grabbing motion in the air. A golden cube with a radius of 3 meters began to enshroud his body. Countless golden symbols revolved around the cube, releasing an extremely fearsome sealing power. Emperor Ziwei was forced to the ground again by this terrifying sealing power. Lightning appeared beneath Enlin's feet, and he flashed toward Emperor Ziwei at a terrifying speed. His fist was enshrouded in golden light as he launched another punch toward Emperor Ziwei's reddened face. Boom! Emperor Ziwei's head spun from the impact of this punch, and he threw up another mouthful of blood. Moonlight Dragon Fist. Enlin roared with rage as the power of the moon burst forth from his fist. The projection of a white dragon's head appeared, and he slammed it toward Emperor Ziwei's face. The power of the moon exploded forth, and the entire space on the 99th level solidified into a white domain. Emperor Ziwei's body also became extremely tough. Extreme Yang Reincarnation Sword. Enlin clapped his hands together, and a golden long sword materialized in the air. Scorching waves of energy surged through the air. The golden longsword buzzed as it pierced into Emperor Ziwei's chest with terrifying heat. Myriad Demon Palm. Azure Dragon Roar. Lightning-piercing Meteor Finger. A series of terrifying attacks rained down on the fallen Emperor Ziwei. Emperor Ziwei was completely defenseless and could only endure Enlin's relentless barrage of attacks, just like how he had slammed Enlin into the wall earlier. Didn't you have a lot of fun beating me up before? Come on. Why aren't you so cocky now? How does it feel to be slammed into the wall? Enlin taunted as he unleashed a flurry of spell techniques. He was getting more and more excited as he fought. What kind of experience was it to beat up a Dao integration stage true god? Normal people wouldn't even have the opportunity to do so. Some people would even piss themselves in fear. Even if Emperor Ziwei told him to, he wouldn't dare to attack. However, Enlin was different. He was someone who had been brutally ravaged by Emperor Ziwei. Now that he had a chance to exact revenge, how could he hold back? If you really had to ask him how it felt, he could only answer, "Very good. That's right, super good." Enlin used Emperor Ziwei's spell technique to bombard Emperor Ziwei. He didn't use any of the same techniques, but he continued to ravage Emperor Ziwei in a myriad of different ways. Emperor Ziwei finally understood that all of his techniques had been stolen by Enlin. Aside from a relatively powerful body, he had nothing else. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, Bai Zhong stood in the air and stared at the absurd scenes unfolding before him with a dumbstruck expression. Over 10,000 students and teachers stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes as they listened to Enlin's taunts. They felt like they were living in a dream. The entire place was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. This turn of events was far too astonishing. Enlin was clearly on the back foot, but he was able to slam Emperor Ziwei into the ground and unleash a flurry of attack. Even though they were witnessing this with their own eyes, it was still extremely difficult to accept. After a long while, a student finally murmured, "That's the high and mighty Emperor Ziwei. How did he get pummeled just like that? I saw that his nose was already bleeding from the beating. I feel like I'm dreaming. Did classmate Enlin really just slam Emperor Ziwei into the ground? It looks like he used some kind of sealing spell technique on Emperor Ziwei. It looks like Emperor Ziwei is completely unable to retaliate. He can also absorb the power of spell technique. Did you not see that? Enlin can use Emperor Ziwei's spell techniques. That's the Emperor of the Celestial Court. Godin is so bad *SS. He's got guts. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life." Enlin pummeled Emperor Ziwei. Did you see that? That's our Godin. He's an existence who can *CK the heavens. Hurry up and sign up if you want to join our team. The scenes unfolding on the screen were simply too astonishing. All of the students discussed spiritedly among themselves, as if they were trying to express their irrepressible emotions through words. Even Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Enlin had once again refreshed their understanding of power. My God, this is something that I wouldn't even dare to dream about, but classmate Enlin did it. Tang Shimin murmured with undisguised astonishment on his face. Xianyuan Cheng smiled. Do you understand now? As long as you work hard, anything is possible. Somewhere in the sky, the celestial Dharch was also completely dumbstruck. He had never seen Emperor Ziwei being pummeled into the ground like this before. Dark history, this was definitely dark history. He silently pulled out a crystal ball and secretly recorded this historical moment. He had profited from this round of secret observation, and it was a huge profit. Chapter 6:18. Enlin was getting tired of using Emperor Ziwei's spell techniques, so he decided to use his fists instead. A series of sandbag-sized fists crashed into Emperor Ziwei's body, sweeping up bursts of golden shockwaves that caused the entire Immortal Spirit Tower to tremor slightly. This was the legendary tower quaking. Emperor Ziwei's face was already swollen and bruised, and his clothes were in disarray. He looked nothing like the Emperor of the Celestial Court. When had he ever been beaten so badly before? From birth until now, he had always been a proud dragon, and he was always the one beating the crap out of everyone else. But now, Enlin had given him a taste of what it felt like to be bashed. Furthermore, he was completely defenseless, and he felt as if he had fallen from the clouds into hell. How does it feel? Does it feel good to be rubbed into the ground? Enlin vented his negative emotions as he rained down punches. Perhaps this is retribution, Emperor Ziwei thought to himself. Finally, he was unable to endure the relentless barrage of attacks, and his body began to crumble. Enlin faltered slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately stopped his attacks. "You won, classmate Enlin," Emperor Ziwei said with a smile. Even though he was in an extremely sorry state, he still maintained his graceful demeanor. Enlin extended a salute. "Senior Ziwei, this was only a sparring match. You wouldn't mind, would you?" He was feeling extremely uneasy. Even though everything was for the sake of his mission, it was still a fact that he had bashed Emperor Ziwei. If Emperor Ziwei decided to come after him after he had provoked such a lofty and mighty figure, then he would be screwed. "This was only a small sparring match, and you defeated me with your own strength. I'm not that petty." Emperor Ziwei looked at Enlin with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. "I'm very surprised by your strength. I look forward to your performance in the future." Enlin felt like Emperor Ziwei was very considerate. After getting beaten up, he even praises me. How nice." Emperor Ziwei's divine sense completely dissipated. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Enlin stood alone like an invincible war god. Sunlight shone through the window onto his body, enveloping him in a layer of golden radiance, making his figure appear even taller and more imposing in the eyes of the crowd. The North Pole Emperor lost. The Emperor of the Celestial Court was defeated just like that. I still can't believe it. Just how did Enlin do it? Godin really won. He really did it. The Immortal Spirit Tower has been cleared by classmate Enlin on his own. This is huge news. This is definitely huge news. This is something that will be sung throughout the entire Celestial Court and even the entire Kingdom of the 9 States. I'm so lucky to be able to witness such a great moment. Skipping class to watch the battle here is the wisest decision I've made this year. Some students even took out their phones or photographic artifacts to take pictures of the figure in the water ripples. Enlin, some retarded superfan began to chant Enlin's name at the top of his lungs. Gradually, more and more people began to chime in, and their voices converged to form a tidal wave. Enlin. In the end, the chant of Enlin erupted into the heavens. This was the most direct expression of emotion that the students had toward the man who had fallen over and over again and stood up again and again. In that instant, Enlin was the undisputed war god in their hearts. A genuine smile blossomed on Su Xiaolan's face as she looked around at the cries of the spectators. She was feeling extremely proud of Enlin. Even though Enlin was situated at the pinnacle of the Immortal Spirit Tower, he could still hear the cheers from below, and his heart was a little moved. He had won. He had really done it. He had defeated a seemingly invincible foe. Were these battles of great help to him? Of course they were. Furthermore, the benefits were immeasurable. Being able to battle mighty figures who had attained the divine Tao or even Tao integration stage mighty figures would not only drastically enhance one's combat prowess, but they would also be able to experience the power of the Tao realm to the fullest. This would be immensely helpful in constructing one's own Tao in the future. Another thought suddenly occurred to Enlin. He had passed the 99th level and defeated Emperor Ziwei, so what were the rewards for passing the 99th level? My God! Emperor Ziwei had disappeared without a word, and he hadn't even received any benefits, let alone an inheritance. How King irresponsible was that? Right at this moment, Bai Zhong appeared before Enlin with an excited expression on his face. Congratulations, classmate Enlin, for passing the final level of the Immortal Spirit Tower and accomplishing an unprecedented feat. You are the pride of the Celestial Court, and your feats will be celebrated throughout the entire Celestial Court. Even throughout the entire kingdom of the 9 states. Enlin glowered at Bai Zhong with a dark expression. I don't care about fame. Bai Zhong was a little confused as he looked at Enlin. Why, classmate Enlin, you don't seem very happy? I just want to ask, I passed the 99th level, so where is my inheritance? Enlin asked expressionlessly. Bai Zhong's body shuddered, and his face convulsed slightly. He suddenly came to a realization. That's right, he had passed the 99th level. Where was his inheritance? Even if there was no inheritance, there should at least be a reward, right? But no one had told him what the reward for passing the 99th level was. After all, no one had even passed the 98th level. That's a good question. Bai Zhong clapped his hands together with a buoyant smile. Enlin. So? Enlin asked. We'll talk about that later. Bai Zhong wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Ck who? Enlin spoke with a solemn expression. Bai Zhong was dumbstruck. What? So be it. Enlin wore a disinterested expression as he said, Just get me out of here. Bai Zhong. So his elated congratulatory speech ended in such a strange and inexplicable manner? Bai Zhong's heart was crushed. Enlin finally appeared outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, and he was warmly welcomed by all of his friends and tens of thousands of students. Enlin, are your wounds all right? Su Xiaolan made her way over to him with furrowed brows as she caressed the wound on Enlin's chest with her slender fingers. Thanks to the self-healing power of the evergreen technique, the bleeding stopped. Don't worry, it's just a minor injury. Enlin patted Su Xiaolan's head with a warm smile on his face. Enlin, your performance has exceeded the limits of my imagination. Tang Shimin also made his way over to Enlin with a scorching light in his eyes. Never would he have thought that he would one day admire his junior disciple. You're the one who's limited your imagination. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips. Enlin, you've given senior student Tang a new lease on life. Xianyuan Cheng praised with an elated expression. Tang Shimin's expression darkened upon hearing this. When did I become a salted fish? How can you talk to your senior like that? Everyone burst into raucous laughter. The teachers and students slowly dispersed amid a mix of excitement and contentment. Sword Immortal Dong Yi looked at Enlin with approval and admiration in his eyes. Enlin had done something that he would never be able to do, so it was impossible for him not to be impressed. Thus, the journey to the Immortal Spirit Tower drew to a conclusion. However, those legendary stories were destined to never be forgotten by people. Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyun, Su Xiaolan, Lu Qianhuan, and even Tang Shimin, all of whom were legendary figures. All of their feats were being discussed enthusiastically by everyone. Of course, there was also Enlin, who pummeled a Tao integration stage true god and passed through all 99 levels of the Immortal Spirit Tower. His appearance pushed the story of the Immortal Spirit Tower to the pinnacle, and it became a legendary story that spread throughout the entire kingdom of the 9 states. Chapter 6:19. Enlin returned to his dorm room in exhaustion. He didn't have time to look at the system's mission, but he knew that he had definitely completed the mission. Otherwise, he would have been running around naked on the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Running around naked in front of tens of thousands of teachers and students. Just the thought of it sent chills running down his spine. Thankfully, he had successfully rubbed Emperor Ziwei into the ground. He opened the door to find a huge white dog pouncing toward him. Big brother, I heard you pummeled Emperor Ziwei. That's so bad *SS woof. Lin patted the dog's head with a nonchalant smile. It's just a small matter, don't make a big deal out of it. Gasp. Xiao Zhe and Little Lang both drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. He had pummeled a legendary Dao integration stage true god, and he said it was a small matter? How bad *SS? Only Dabai had already gotten used to Lin's antics, and he yelled in a very natural manner. In any case, this is something worth celebrating. Let's have frying pan level hot pot today. Woof. Xiao Zhe, Little Lang, Little Cho, Little Tian, and even Little Hong and Tina's eyes lit up upon hearing this. So this was Dabai's main point. All of the beast pets chimed in agreement, expressing that they had to have frying pan level hot pot to celebrate. During the past few days without Lin, everything they ate tasted like *T, and they had completely lost their appetites. It was also because of these past few days that Tina, who had been troubled by the lack of food, was successfully pulled into Little Red's group, and she chose to eat solar energy. Lin paused for a moment before finally nodding in agreement to Dabai's suggestion. Another burst of raucous cheers erupted within the dorm room. It wasn't time for dinner yet, so Lin carried Shui Zhantian back to his bedroom. He laid Shui Zhantian down at the foot of the bed before lying down and resting his head on Shui Zhantian's body. Shui Zhantian's fur was soft and warm, and it was very comfortable to sleep on. Master, I'm so loyal and devoted, I'm so sincere. Don't worry, I'll get you a bowl of soup for dinner. Yay. Master is the best. Shui Zhantian patted Lin's cheek with an excited expression on his face. Alright, stop messing around. Let me rest for a while. Lin had experienced so many battles and was indeed very tired. He had basically reached the point where he would fall asleep the moment he laid down. Before he fell asleep, he thought of something and opened the system in his mind. Sure enough, it showed that the special mission had been completed, and he could now draw his reward. Lin chose to start drawing, and a special spell wheel appeared. Countless spells appeared on it, all of which were shrouded in a layer of white mist, making it impossible to see their names. He cursed in his heart. If he couldn't even see the name of the wheel, what was the point of playing this roulette? He might as well just show the results of the draw. The spell technique he had obtained from the previous lottery was the Make You Cry spell technique, and it couldn't be used on Dao integration stage cultivators. As a result, Lin could only bully a small fry like Ji Yongfang. Hopefully, it will be better this time. Lin began the lottery, and the wheel began to spin. He rubbed his hands and silently prayed to Senior White for his blessings. Stop. The wheel began to spin slower and slower until it finally stopped spinning. The mist on the box that the needle was pointing at slowly dispersed, revealing the name of the spell technique. Holy F***CK. He stared at the spell technique in front of him, and his eyes widened in disbelief. Whoosh! The spell technique from the system transformed into a streak of white light and fused into Lin's body. Make You Suck spell technique. One-way biological attack spell technique. The target struck by this spell technique will experience an extremely strong sense of diarrhea. If the target's cultivation base is too low, it may even kill the target. If the target's cultivation base is too high, they will have a certain level of resistance. Note: this spell technique can only be used once a day. It is ineffective against targets of the Dao integration stage. Lin almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was this kind of messy spell technique again. What was the point of having it? Not only was this spell technique useless, but it was also disgusting. If you want to cry, you can still try it on Dabai. If you want to pull this spell technique, who will try it on? There isn't even a single villain in the school right now. Speaking of which, can you really pull someone to death? And Lin was a little tempted. Although spell techniques were useless, he could still play with them. He could make many small animals have diarrhea and increase his knowledge. For example, have you ever seen a snake poop? Have you ever seen a tiger poop? Have you ever seen a dragon poop? Have you ever seen a phoenix poop? Also, could skeletons poop? That's right. He could see all kinds of animal postures that he had never seen before. Just thinking about it made him a little excited, and Lin fell asleep in his reverie, and he seemed to have had a beautiful dream. Could cultivators dream? The answer was yes. Furthermore, cultivators' dreams were all very clear. Some were simple sweet dreams, some were Tao realm dreams that reflected one's Tao heart, and there were also dreams of inner demons. Some of the more powerful ones could even dream of a certain type of future. Night fell. Countless stars appeared in the night sky. And Lin dreamed that he made Su Xiaolan angry and was slapped in the face. However, when the woman was angry, she was always unreasonable. As if one slap wasn't enough, she gave him a series of slaps. Big brother and wake up. Woof. Wake up, it's time to eat, woof. Dabai raised its paws and slapped Lin left and right, finally waking up Lin. Lin slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Dabai. He wasn't in a bad mood when he woke up. Otherwise, he would have just unleashed a mountain-quaking fist and pummeled Dabai to the point where even its own mother wouldn't be able to recognize it. Immediately after that was a family gathering. This family referred to the large family of beast pet. And Lin also called his neighbor, Su Xiaolan, over. Su Xiaolan wore a light blue Taoist robe, which was a rare occasion. Her slender waist was tied up with a plain-colored sash, and her black hair was tied up in a bun, revealing her fair and slender neck. Her eyes were bright and mesmerizing, and she was very elegant. And Lin, you haven't even fully recovered from your injuries, but you're already so eager to hold a celebratory feast? Her voice was as pleasant as an oriole's, and there was a dainty smile on her face. And Lin massaged his brows, which still had Dabai's paw prints on his face. It's all because of these beast pets. I feel like I'm not their master, but more like a servant who takes care of their meals. Dabai slammed his paw onto the table. How are you going to cultivate our loyalty if you don't take care of our meals and lodging? Woof. Big brother Bai is right. Shui Zhantian chimed in agreement. Master, I only have 2 hobbies left, photosynthesis and frying pan food. You have to satisfy us. Xiao Hong also chimed in a sweet voice. See? And Lin splayed his hands open in exasperation. Su Xiaolan chuckled as her eyes curved into crescent. Then it's all thanks to Dabai and the others that I have the opportunity to eat this hot pot. And Lin chuckled. No, as long as you want to eat it, I'll cook it for you every day. He extended a hand toward Su Xiaolan as he spoke and grasped onto her soft, almost boneless hand. Su Xiaolan's eyes were as vibrant as the autumn waters, and a faint blush appeared on her face as she turned her head away in embarrassment. Just eat hot pot, why are you touching me? The soup hasn't even started boiling yet. And Lin chuckled. Xiao Chou silently unleashed his flame power to increase the intensity of the heat. Dabai silently pulled out his homemade dog biscuits and distributed a few to his other beast pet. He was just worried that they would be stuffed with dog biscuits before the hot pot even started. The steaming hot pot wafted through the air as an extremely alluring aroma wafted through the air. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, Xiao Zhe, and all of his beast pets enjoyed the hot pot together. This was a peaceful and blissful day. Chapter 620. The next morning, Lin and Tina went to class again. Lin caught sight of a bird flying through the sky, and his expression darkened. A certain spell technique pierced through space before striking the bird. Yu Pu's spell technique. Lin didn't unleash the full power of this spell technique. Instead, he only used a sliver of his power. Even so, the bird's body still shuddered. Immediately afterward, a pile of poop fell from the sky and landed on the ground. That wasn't all. The bird continued to poo as it flew through the sky, and a small pile of poop even struck a female student's clothes, drawing loud screams from the female student. Unlin nodded upon seeing this. Just a sliver of his power was enough to produce such a significant effect. It looked like this spell technique was quite powerful. Tina turned to Unlin with a speechless expression, as if she wanted to say something. She couldn't detect the fluctuations of the spell technique, but from the bird's appearance and Unlin's expression, she could roughly guess what was going on. Hence, a hint of disdain appeared in her eyes as if to say, "You've changed, giant Unlin." Class time always passed by quickly. During the lunch break, Unlin, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, and Lu Zhan were summoned by their homeroom teacher, Flying Sword God, to give them their rewards for the Immortal Spirit Tower trial. Being able to battle a mighty figure of the past and receive an inheritance was the best reward they could hope for. However, other material rewards were still a must. After all, Xiaoxian United University wasn't that poor after all. Lu Zhan's reward was quite simple, as he only received some pills and spirit stones. Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, and Su Qianyun, on the other hand, had all passed level 80 and entered the Hall of Fame, so their rewards naturally couldn't be too shabby. Aside from pills and spirit stones, they also received a chance to enter the University Treasure Vault to choose a high-rank spirit tool, as well as a 5th-grade Immortal Pill coupon, which allowed them to refine an Immortal Pill below the 5th grade for free from Yishi. Su Xiaolan had passed the higher levels, so she received 2 Tier 5 Immortal Pill coupons. As for Unlin, he was someone who would be commended by the entire school. Putting aside the spirit stones and spirit pills, there were only a few 100,000 spirit stones and a dozen spirit pills. He didn't care about the 2 high-grade spirit artifacts or the 5 grade 5 Immortal Pill coupons. He didn't even look at the dazzling trophy and the soulful medal. Unlin directly asked the homeroom teacher, "Where is Emperor Ziwei's inheritance?" Flying Sword God. The homeroom teacher was feeling quite depressed. He couldn't go and question Emperor Ziwei about this, could he? He was the emperor of the Celestial Court. It was not his business whether or not he passed down the inheritance. Moreover, news of Emperor Ziwei's brutal beating at the hands of Unlin had already spread far and wide. It would already be a blessing if Emperor Ziwei didn't settle the score with Unlin, but Unlin was actually so thick-skinned as to try and claim the inheritance? Wasn't this like lighting a lamp in the toilet? Flying Sword God finally managed to pacify Unlin and promised to give Unlin an answer in a week. If Emperor Ziwei still didn't say anything after a week, then as the homeroom teacher, he would have no choice but to sacrifice himself and speak up for his student. Flying Sword God looked up at the sky. Just thinking about it made him feel like a hero. After school, Unlin returned to his dorm with the trophy and medal. The trophy was carved from vital stones and exuded extremely powerful vital energy fluctuations. It was worth around 100,000 spirit stones, and there was a line of words engraved on it, "Unlin, the rising star of the Celestial Court." The metal was polished from 5 colored pearls from the Eastern Sea and appeared extremely intricate and beautiful. There were also a few words engraved on it, "Little War God of the Celestial Court." Heh! Looks like I've made a name for myself in the battle of the War God. Even the Celestial Court has officially acknowledged me. Unlin looked at the medal with a smug smile. Don't be too complacent. There's still true Lord Erlang above you. Don't you see the word "little" on the medal? Student Unlin needs to continue to work hard, Su Xiaolan advised. Yes, Xiaolan is right. Celestial Maiden Xiaolan is my guide in life. She's the one who keeps me from losing my way in the face of glory, and she's leading me down a more glorious path. Unlin spoke with a solemn expression. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Unlin with a seductive expression. Shut up. After returning to his dorm, Unlin organized the items in his storage ring to find that he had a lot of immortal pills. 5 Immortal Pill coupons were completely useless. Also, what kind of high-rank spirit tools should he exchange for? Perhaps only immortal tools could stir up waves in his heart now. He fell into a dazed state of overabundance in the end. He asked his beast pets what immortal pills and spirit tools they needed. In the end, he discovered that he didn't need most of them. Only Tina requested a wood-type immortal pill that was imbued with extremely powerful life force energy in order to construct a mirror world. "What's a mirror world?" Anlin asked. Tina blinked her emerald eyes as she replied, "That's the fragment of the realm core you're talking about. It's using the ancient Tai Chu realm's Qi Lu city as the foundation to construct a world within it. It's like a world with a symmetrical mirror surface." Anlin's interest was immediately piqued upon hearing this, and he placed Tina in his palm. "Quick, tell me what's going on." Very few people knew that Tina had obtained a fragment of the realm core. A life form fusing with a fragment of the realm core was unheard of. Aside from him, Shuizhantian, and the 3 blood tribe servants, all of whom were on his side, knew about this. Oh, perhaps the Snow Maidens knew about this as well. Tina didn't mention anything about the fragment of the realm core before, as she was also quite clueless about it. Back when she had absorbed the wandering spirits in Qi Lu City, it was more of an instinctive reaction due to the guidance of the realm core. However, Tina had already begun to explore the power of the fragment of the realm core within her body. She discovered that in order to allow the wandering spirits to live in the mirror world, she had to first construct a reasonable world. Secondly, she needed extremely powerful life force energy as the source of energy for all living beings. This was not something that she could achieve on her own, and she might need the power of an immortal pill as well. Anlin paused for a moment before asking, "Is 1 5th-grade immortal pill enough? Do you want a few more?" Tina shook her head. "No need. 1 5th-grade immortal pill already contains a lot of life force energy." "Oh right, Giant Anlin, I can project your consciousness into my world. Do you want to come and have a look?" Tina asked with a wide grin. Anlin's eyes lit up upon hearing this. How could he possibly refuse? He immediately nodded. Of course. A vibrant smile blossomed on Tina's face as she flapped her golden wings and flew toward Anlin. She extended a slender little hand toward Anlin's forehead as an ethereal fragment suddenly appeared in her eyes. She spoke in a soft voice, "I want your consciousness to not refuse my invitation." Anlin nodded. Immediately afterward, a certain summoning power suddenly drew upon his consciousness. He didn't refuse, and the world around him spun as a new world appeared before him. Chapter 6:21. A warm sun hung high in the sky. There were white clouds in the blue sky, and the clouds danced and changed shape as the gentle breeze blew past. Anlin appeared on a street in a city. This street was very wide, and the ground was paved with extremely smooth brick. There were many shops on either side of the street. A dazed expression appeared on his face. He and Xiaolan had once held hands and walked side by side on this street. This was Qi Lu City, the extremely prosperous Qi Lu City from countless years ago. However, there were no living beings here. All of the apricot trees along the street had also become withered and lifeless. Anlin looked up at the sun and took a deep breath. The sunlight was a little blinding. This place gave him the same feeling as the illusionary realm he had been in. It was extremely realistic, and all of his senses were no different from the outside world. No, perhaps this was reality. This was the world reflected in the mirror. Giant Anlin, my world can't allow beings of too high a rank to exist, so you can only unleash spirit-nurturing stage power. Tina's light voice sounded right beside Anlin's ear, giving him a fright. Anlin looked around in surprise. "Huh? Little Na, where are you?" "Me? I am this world." Tina chuckled. "This world? My God!" Anlin was instantly struck by a sense of superiority upon hearing this. He asked, "I'm just a projection of my consciousness, how can I possess power? Didn't they say that consciousness can't interfere with the physical world?" That's because I've bestowed upon you a body. You're not just a consciousness now, you have a body of flesh and blood. Tina spoke with a smug expression. Only then did Lin begin to examine his own body. He discovered that his appearance was the same as before, but this was a rather powerful body, not the body of the war god that he had attained. He unleashed his cloud riding technique, and vital energy surged as his body rose into the air. Haha, there's even vital energy here? Lin chuckled with elation. Yes, Yuan Qi is the same as earth, water, wind, and fire. It is the most basic substance in the world. It has existed since the birth of this world. Tina paused for a few seconds before continuing. When life is born in this world and the laws become more complete, I might be able to try to fuse you as a living being. In other words, the entire life form has integrated into this world. Lin was shocked when he heard this. He raised his head in shock and asked, "What do you mean? My whole body can come here?" His main body entered? That's right, It's just like the transmigration you mentioned before. Yes, it's transmigration to this place. There was a hint of excitement in Tina's voice, and it was clear that she was eager to try it out. Lin fell silent. Could it allow living beings to transmigrate? This was most likely not an illusionary realm. Tina was trying to create a real world. Transmigration of one's consciousness could be created through illusionary realms, but when it came to transmigration of an individual, it had to be a complete world. Little Na, how are you going to create the substance in this world? Don't you need realm essence crystals? Lin asked with a concerned expression. There are already realm essence crystals in the fragment of the realm core, as well as the life essence of 9 return to void stage mighty figures. These were all left behind by my 2 grandfathers when they wanted to construct this world. However, my world is different from the one they wanted to create. My world is a world that combines illusion and reality. It possesses the authenticity of the foundation of this world and can avoid the erosion of the laws of the universe. At the same time, it can also make my illusionary creations come to life. Tina spoke incessantly, and Lin listened with rapt attention. Lin knew that Tina had already become a godlike existence in this world. How could he put this? It was truly terrifying. No one had ever been able to fuse with a fragment of the realm core in the past. She had most likely set a precedent. It was exactly because of this that she possessed a terrifying amount of authority over this world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to refer to her as the god of creation or God. Lin flew through the air. Qi Lu City was extremely large, covering an area of over 50 kilometers. The Black Pagoda still stood at the center of the city, and there were 9 orbs of light hovering in the air above the pagoda, as if they were nurturing something. Those 9 orbs of light were most likely the life essence of the 9 return to void stage mighty figures that Tina was referring to. Lin continued onward and flew out of Qi Lu City. A vast expanse of barren earth appeared before his eyes, presenting a bleak and desolate sight to behold. He couldn't help but ask, "Little Na, just how big is this world of yours?" It's about 5,000 kilometers in radius. This is as far as I can expand this world. As for whether it can grow in the future, that's hard to say, Tina replied with an uncertain expression. 5,000 kilometers in radius. Lin's face convulsed upon hearing this. This was way too King big. This nascent world was equivalent to 80 million square kilometers in size, while the total area of the Earth was only about 500 million square kilometers. He was extremely eager to see how this world would develop. "Little Na, let me out. I'll find an immortal pill for you right now." Lin spoke with excitement. After a rush of dizziness, Lin's vision darkened. Immediately afterward, light returned to his eyes, and he was greeted by the sight of a beautiful, flawless face. Giant Lin, what do you think? Am I awesome? There was a hint of anticipation in Tina's eyes as she flew toward Lin with an enticing smile on her face. "Little Na is super awesome." Unlin patted Tina's head with a doting expression. I'm going to Do Shui Palace first. Tina flew onto Unlin's shoulder before wrapping her arms around his neck with a smile. Little Na wants to come with you. I've never seen immortal pill refinement before. Unlin couldn't refuse Tina, who was so eager to learn. He thought about it for a moment before nodding and flying toward Do Shui Palace on Dabai's back. Dabai flew through the clouds and landed in front of a majestic building. Wow! What a huge palace! It's like a mountain. Tina's eyes were wide open, and a green light swirled within them as an extremely excited expression appeared on her face. Unlin smiled at the sight of Do Shui Palace. Thinking back to the first time he had come here, his expression was no better than Tina's. He was a regular here, and he was immediately treated like a nouveau riche as soon as he walked in. A male and a female attendant brought them directly to Ishi. Mr. Ishi, how have you been? Unlin was struck by a sense of familiarity at the sight of the chubby Ishi, and he immediately made his way over to greet him. Haha, Mr. Unlin, I'm still the same as always. I heard that you've made great progress in alchemy recently, and you've also thrashed Emperor Ziwei. I'm both shocked and envious. Mr. Ishi was also very excited to see Unlin, and he looked up and down at Unlin as if he was trying to glean something from him. Sigh, let's not talk about it. I fought that arduous battle for nothing. Unlin couldn't help but brood over Emperor Ziwei's inheritance whenever he thought of him. How could you say that? You have to know that you're renowned throughout the celestial court now. Many immortals are talking about you, and many celestial maidens are probably interested in you, hee. Ishi spoke with a sneaky expression. Tina's mouth gaped open as she stared at the man before her. A giant god-fiend with Shuizhantian's bloodline? Unlin. Ishi faltered slightly upon hearing this, and he turned to discover a flawlessly perfect fairy looking at him with amazement in her eyes. Holy F***ck. What a beautiful fairy. Chapter 6:22. Tina recoiled in fright at that roar, and she rubbed her head against Unlin's neck before tugging on Unlin's hair as she stared fearfully at the fatso before her. Ishi finally realized that he had lost his composure, and he chuckled sheepishly. He then turned to Unlin with an envious expression. Not bad, Unlin. Such a beautiful fairy. What's going on? Unlin introduced with a gentle smile. Her name is Tina, and she's my beast pet. He's Ishi, the #1 pill refinement master of Do Shui Palace, as well as the #1 pill refinement master of the Celestial Court. Ishi's lips twitched. Beast pet? Unlin, what kind of dumb luck do you have to have such a beautiful fairy as your follower? Unlin, Tina's eyes widened. Giant Unlin, he can refine pills even though he's so fat? Could it be that the more his body resembles a pill, the better his pill refinement skills are? Ishi, don't spout nonsense, little Na, big brother Ishi has a great body, Unlin rebuked. Oh. Tina pouted before falling silent obediently. Ishi massaged his brows. Alright, you guys win. It's rare for you to say something like that, but your Tina immediately retaliated for you. What else can I say? Tina giggled. I'm just telling the truth. Alright, let's get down to business. Unlin pulled out a 5th grade immortal pill coupon with a smile. Refine me a 5th grade wood type immortal pill with the richest life force. Ishi's eyes lit up. Are you going to show off your pill-eating skills again? No, Tina wants to eat it, Unlin replied. Ishi was a little disappointed, but he still began to refine the immortal pill. What he wanted to concoct was a 5th-tier immortal pill, the Verdant Emperor Immortal Flower Pill. It was concocted by extracting the essence of 9 different immortal flowers and using the Verdant Emperor Immortal Vine to concoct it. It had the effect of reviving the dead, and it contained an extremely rich life force. Ishi's hands danced through the air as he manipulated the white divine flame, upon which a series of extremely precious medicinal ingredients hovered in midair. His round body continuously moved about as if he was dancing. The divine flame also danced along with him. Tina was dumbfounded. Dancing was an eyesore, but this was the first time she had seen such a nimble fatty. Unknowingly, it was time to condense the pill. A white elixir shrouded in immortal chi appeared in the air. Boundless life energy rippled outward, and countless projections of immortal flowers bloomed around the pill, making the azure tharch immortal flower pill even more beautiful. So beautiful, Unlin and Tina stared blankly at the pill as they spoke in unison. Ishi had a smug expression on his face. He felt the greatest sense of accomplishment when he completed the pill. Unlin pulled out an immortal pill coupon and gave it to Ishi as payment for this immortal pill. Then, he immediately bade farewell. The scene he wanted to see the most was about to unfold. In the dorm room, Tina held the huge immortal pill in her hands with a smile. When I ate immortal pills in the past, they were even bigger than me, and I had to hold them and chew them slowly. I should be able to eat them much faster now. Unlin nodded. Hurry up and eat them. Oh, right, before you give birth to life, let me enter your world first, he added after a moment of thought. He had a feeling that witnessing the creation and birth of life would be an unimaginable opportunity. Tina pressed her palm against Unlin's forehead again, and a powerful summoning power swept toward him. Unlin felt a rush of dizziness before his consciousness reappeared in Tina's world. He stretched his slightly frail body. That's enough. All right, then I'll eat the immortal pill and prepare to give birth to life, Tina said with a wide grin. Unlin unleashed his cloud-riding technique and flew into the air to sense the changes taking place around him. Everything was extremely quiet, but an extremely penetrating light suddenly burst forth from the top of the Black Tower at the center of Chi Lu City. At the same time, 9 balls of light began to revolve around the top of the tower like planets. An invisible ripple began to spread from the top of the tower to heaven and earth, reaching infinitely high and infinitely far. The aura of life appeared from nothingness, just like the harmony of yin and yang, and life and death intertwined. Wisps of life began to emerge from the boundless, deathly stillness. Heaven and earth began to tremble. This was an earth-shattering transformation as countless laws began to be reconstructed. In that instant, Unlin's entire body felt extremely comfortable, as if his life had been elevated and his soul had been cleansed. Only now did he truly feel like he was a living being. That's right, Tina had only bestowed upon him a body, not a complete life form. However, now that life force had appeared in heaven and earth, his body was finally filled with life force. This heaven and earth had completely changed. It was as if heaven and earth had been split apart from chaos, as if the first wisp of light had been born from the darkness. Life had been born from the boundless, deathly stillness. This was an extremely grand creation. The sun was warm, and the light breeze brought with it the aura of life. Tiny plants began to appear on the ground. Then, under the urging of some kind of power, the renewal of life began to speed up. Countless microorganisms appeared, grass grew on the ground, new buds appeared on the withered apricot tree, and a wild flower swayed in the wind. Master, the living beings here are still quite simple, so I'm going to speed up the passage of time, Tina's voice sounded. Unlin was completely dumbfounded upon hearing this. She could even control time? This was something that even Tao integration stage mighty figures would find difficult to accomplish on the Tai Chu continent. This won't affect me, right? Unlin was afraid that his lifespan would be shortened as well. F***ck. It would be hilarious if he were to die of old age after coming here to watch the show. It won't. My time manipulation can only be used on the living beings of this world, Tina replied patiently. The living beings around him began to speed up upon seeing Unlin's nod. Everything was progressing extremely quickly, as if a video had been sped up tens of thousands of times, or even hundreds of millions of times. Unlin flew out of Chi Lu City. Originally, there was only a vast expanse of grasslands and small plants here. However, as the ecosystem continued to develop, The living beings here began to multiply, grow, mutate, and multiply, and the diversity of the living beings here began to increase. Not only were there grasslands here, but there were also deserts, forests, lakes, streams, and rivers. There were also a series of mountain ranges, basins, and valleys. Insects, mammals, all types of primitive fish, and birds also began to appear. All of this was a miracle of creation. Unlin flew over this continent, and his divine sense expanded to its fullest extent as he observed the miracle of life. He could sense the life of all living beings, as well as the miraculous process of nurturing all living beings. As more and more living beings appeared, it became more and more difficult for Tina to accelerate time. Giant Unlin, let's call it a day. The power of the immortal pill has been used up, and I've also run out of energy. Let this world evolve naturally for a while, Tina's voice suddenly sounded. Unlin finally came to his senses after being immersed in the miraculous and harmonious nature of life. He looked at the mountains in front of him. There was a rabbit that was taller than a human. It opened its sharp teeth and pounced on a wolf. It directly bit off the wolf's neck and continued to chew on it. Unlin felt like he had never seen such a creature before. This was a very interesting world. He was also feeling quite tired. Paying close attention to all of this was extremely taxing on his mind. "All right, little Na, teleport me out of here as well," Unlin said as he massaged his brows. The scenery in front of him changed. His vision darkened and brightened. He once again appeared in the room of the small attic. It was already late at night. Before he knew it, another day had passed, and he had skipped classes for a day. No, perhaps it had been a few days. After all, he didn't know if this night was the same night that he had entered Tina's world. Whatever, I'll go to sleep first. Unlin was so sleepy that he fell asleep as soon as he lay down. Tina was even more exhausted than before, and her petite body was curled up into a ball as she tugged at Unlin's hair with her slender little hands. Her golden wings dimmed as if they had been switched off, and she fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 6:23. Unlin slept soundly for the entire night, and when he woke up in the morning, he was greeted by a faint fragrance that resembled the fragrance of a lotus flower blooming under the moonlight. It was light and refreshing, but it was also extremely alluring. He opened his eyes to find a petite woman lying beside him. She was indeed quite petite. After all, she was only 20 centimeters tall. The woman was lying on her side, and her features were flawlessly beautiful. Every inch of her body was perfect. Her breathing was extremely even, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Her skin was translucent, and it was even more dazzling than her white dress under the sunlight. She really was beautiful. Unlin couldn't help but admire her beauty for a while longer before slowly rising to his feet. He was about to go to class when he heard the faint sound of singing drifting toward him from the window in the hall. He knew that Xiao Hong was photosynthesizing and singing again. "Xiao Hong, how long has it been since I entered Tina's world?" Unlin opened the window and asked. "La la la." The singing stopped abruptly. "Master, it's been 5 days." Xiao Hong swayed her red head from side to side as she replied in a sweet voice, "Xiaolan also went to look for you, and she applied for a leave of absence for you after discovering your sleeping state." Unlin was quite pleased to hear this. So it had been almost a week. Time sure flies by. However, seeing as Su Xiaolan has already applied for a leave of absence for me, I might as well continue skipping classes. After all, attending classes was nowhere as interesting as watching the creation of a world. Unlin cooked up a kung pao chicken with the frying pan, and an alluring aroma wafted throughout the entire penthouse. Aside from Shuizhantian, Little Lang, Little Xiao, and Little Lang, who had already gone out to cultivate, all of his beast pets gathered around him, drooling as they stared at the dish in the frying pan, eagerly anticipating the day when it was ready. Even Tina, who was still in her dream, sat up in shock before flying toward Unlin in the direction of the scent. "Giant Unlin, are you going to let me sleep?" Do you know how conflicted I was just then? Tina grumbled in a daze as she pounced toward the frying pan. And Lin grabbed onto Tina's slender waist. I didn't ask you to wake up to eat. Also, it's not cooked yet. After I'm done, we'll split it evenly. Humph. You're clearly trying to wake me up. You're trying to lure me out of bed. Tina pouted angrily, but her eyes were still focused on the pot. Then continue to sleep. My hypnosis is very good. I can quickly hypnotize you, woof. Dabai raised his paw and chuckled. My lullaby is also very powerful. Do you want to give it a try, little Na? Xiaohong asked in her sweet voice. It was always better to have one less person to share food with, so Little Red and Dabai both looked at Tina with ill intentions. This scared Tina so much that she shrank back onto Enlin's shoulder and shouted for him to stop. As the pet beasts joked around, the Kung Pao chicken was ready. Each of the pet beasts was given a plate of Kung Pao chicken, and they enjoyed it so much that they almost finished licking the sauce on the plate. After a hearty meal, Enlin fed Tina a wood elemental high-rank spirit pill to replenish her energy. After that, he allowed Tina to project his consciousness into the mirror world to observe the development of the world. The world had developed to a point where it was bursting with vitality. There were all types of exotic plants, birds, and beasts, and Enlin was completely overwhelmed. Master, I can only stabilize the flow of time in this world at around 100,000 times the normal flow of time. I won't be able to do it any faster. Tina's voice suddenly sounded. Thus, the development of this world became more and more complete, and the number of species also increased from tens of thousands to over 1 million. Perhaps it was due to the fact that there was an invisible hand controlling this world, but the probability of these creatures mutating and giving birth to new species was very high. In other words, some of these creatures were no longer just barbaric beasts. Instead, they had developed a certain level of intelligence. Their eyes were intelligent, their hearts were calm, and some of them could even use simple tools. Soon, the world entered the era of the giant beasts. The top of the food chain was dominated by massive ferocious beasts. These ferocious beasts were a little like the dinosaurs that Enlin knew of. Some of them were burly, some were fast, and some were like locusts. In a short period of time, they dominated the entire world. Sigh, these big guys are so annoying. They can reproduce, but they can also eat. All of these plants and small animals are going to be eaten by them sooner or later. Tina grumbled in a rare display. Enlin smiled. The way the dinosaurs were developing was going to create an ecological imbalance sooner or later. When that time came, the dinosaurs would most likely go extinct due to the lack of food and the harsh environment. This world would eventually adjust in its own way. A thought suddenly occurred to Enlin as he looked at the booming development of the dinosaur race. Tina, can you make the dinosaurs smarter? Smarter? Tina paused for a moment before replying. It's impossible to reach the level of a highly intelligent creature. That's a different level of consciousness. However, if you want to make them more agile and give them the ability to learn, you can achieve it by modifying their genes. Then let's give it a try. Enlin was excited. Also, you can also control their numbers, he added. Oh. Tina obeyed obediently. Thus, the next generation of dinosaurs underwent a mutation. The giraffe-like mother Brachiosaurus gave birth to a baby dinosaur with a thick neck and a large, ferocious mouth. The Brachiosaurus was completely dumbfounded and felt like it had given birth to a fake baby. However, she looked at the other Brachiosaurus mothers next door and discovered that some of them had also given birth to baby dinosaurs like this, so she no longer paid any heed to this. These baby dinosaurs were different from the Brachiosaurus mothers. They had long and slender limbs and were extremely agile. They didn't eat herbivores and hunted all types of animals to eat. After the baby dinosaurs grew up, they became even more picky. A pack of ferocious Tyrannosaurus rex charged into the pack of Brachiosaurus, and all of the Brachiosaurus mothers fled for their lives. However, a pack of grown-up Brachiosaurus bravely stood up and pounced toward the Tyrannosaurus rex. This was a brutal battle. The new Brachiosaurus rex's mouth was even larger than the Tyrannosaurus rex's mouth, and its bite force was even more terrifying. In the end, the Tyrannosaurus rex was completely devoured. The older generation of Brachiosaurus rex stared at the group of grown-up Brachiosaurus rex with confusion on their faces. The most ferocious Tyrannosaurus rex had been killed and even eaten by their children? Within a vast river, a female Brachiosaurus rex was trembling uncontrollably while a male Brachiosaurus rex circled around her with a nervous expression. PFFF. The female Brachiosaurus had laid an egg. The male Brachiosaurus rex stared at the huge white egg with confusion in its eyes. Why was there only one egg? Weren't there usually around a dozen eggs? Could it be that it was already too late? At the same time, a pack of shark-toothed dragons with thick and long arms picked up a huge rock and hurled it toward its enemies for the first time in a fierce battle. Unlin looked on with excitement at the development of the dinosaurs. He wanted to see just how much more intelligent dinosaurs could develop. Tina was also very considerate. Even though time was fast-forwarding most of the time, she would occasionally restore the normal flow of time so that Unlin could carefully observe the habits and lifestyles of the dinosaurs. Gradually, the dinosaurs developed from a group into a tribe. Not only would the tribes slaughter one another, but even their own brethren would also slaughter one another. Some of the more nimble dinosaurs invented all types of stone tools, some of which even placed stones on their heads or necks as protective gear to prevent their enemies from tearing at them. Soon dinosaurs that had fused with the vital energy of heaven and earth were born. They were known as dinosaur mutant beasts. Chapter 6:24. When a life form reached a certain level of power, it could even fuse the vital energy of heaven and earth into its body to strengthen its muscles and bones, thereby elevating its life force to a higher level. The first life form in this world that had fused vital energy was born. It was a Tyrannosaurus rex. This Tyrannosaurus rex was extremely tall and powerful, and it was able to snap the neck of a shark-toothed dinosaur with a single bite. With its immense power, it quickly became the chief of a Tyrannosaurus rex tribe and began to conquer the world. As the saying goes, if there is one, there will be two. One by one, dinosaurs that fused with vitality were born. Some creatures like wolves, lions, and crocodiles that happened to eat the corpses of dinosaurs that had fused vital energy were also able to fuse vital energy into their bodies. The structure of this world began to change. It became more and more complex, but also more and more powerful. At this moment, Tina could only accelerate time to around 10,000 times. In the deep sea, ichthyosaurs ruled the seas. They were bloodthirsty and violent, and there was nothing they wouldn't eat. Ichthyosaur mutant beasts like WRMS that could control water-type spell techniques were also born. Flying dragons soared in the sky. Their bodies were light and graceful, but their wings were as sharp as swords. They tore through the air and flew at low altitudes, and their wings could even slice off the heads of the dinosaurs on the ground. The shock waves released from their mouths could even knock down birds in the distance. They were the rulers of the heavens. On land, all types of carnivorous dinosaurs contended with one another, and battles between chiefs could even shatter a small mountain. This was a spectacular era of dinosaurs, and it was also a grand painting of the development of life. Unlin was completely entranced. Giant Unlin, I feel like the spiritual aura of this world has accumulated enough, so we can attempt to create highly intelligent life forms. Tina's voice suddenly sounded, and Unlin shuddered upon hearing this. What? You're saying we can create humans? Unlin was astonished. No. Tina immediately denied. I've already taken in so many souls, so we can create humans first. The other life forms we can create are the races that are related to the life essence of those 9 high-level life forms. They basically represent the highest form of life in their respective races. Due to the fact that their inheritances are complete, their life force genes are extremely outstanding, so it's relatively easy to nurture a life form's body and the race's consciousness. Lin nodded upon hearing this and didn't object to Tina's decision. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a resplendent light appeared beside him. Lin tilted his head to the side, and his pupils shrank slightly. He was greeted by the sight of a flawless woman with translucent skin and flawless features. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, and her long golden hair shone beautifully under the sunlight. Her green eyes shone with the luster of a gem, and her face had an extremely enchanting smile. She was like a saintess, yet also like the most perfect angel. Even Lin felt a little infatuated when he saw her. He was a little unsure. "Little Na, it's me." The woman smiled charmingly. "What's wrong? My appearance hasn't changed, right? Why do you look like you don't know me?" Lin took a deep breath. How did you get bigger?" That's right, Tina was now 7 meters tall. Her appearance was like a fairy from the 9th heaven, which made Lin extremely envious. A smug smile appeared on Tina's face as she replied, "Because I wanted to become this big, so I became this big. I can become even bigger. In this world, I can do whatever I want. I can do whatever I want." She lifted the hem of her dress as she spoke and twirled gracefully in a circle on the tip of her foot. Her lithe and graceful figure swayed gently as her white dress fluttered in the wind. She was like a peerless lotus flower that had suddenly blossomed. "Do I look good?" Tina's voice was like spring water as she asked with a smile. Lin swallowed and nodded. "It's beautiful. But why did you appear here?" "Of course. The feeling of being one with heaven and earth isn't as direct as the feeling of being an individual. I've chosen a few spare spots, and I'm planning to experience them as an individual," Tina replied. "Oh." Lin nodded with a slightly perplexed expression. "Then let's go." Tina giggled as she latched onto Lin's hand. She stepped forward, and the space around them instantly transformed. In the next instant, Lin discovered that he had arrived above an extremely unfamiliar ocean. He was given a fright. This method of teleportation was much more badass than spatial teleportation. There were no side effects, and he didn't feel anything either. He had teleported to another place in the blink of an eye. "I'll use this ocean to nurture the Spirit Fish Clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe," Tina murmured. Lin blinked. "How are we going to nurture them? Nurture them in the water?" "The Spirit Fish Clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe are both amphibious, so let's create a continent first." Tina spread open her hand, and the entire ocean instantly began to churn. Massive waves rose into the air, and an extremely massive continent began to rise from the bottom of the ocean. From a rough estimate, this continent was at least over 500 kilometers wide. Lin was dumbstruck. He had no choice but to kneel before this mighty figure who had created a continent at her word. Lin only came to a realization now. Tina was the goddess of creation, the god of creation. In this place, she could do whatever she wanted. But this place is a little barren. Lin was a little hesitant as he looked at the strange, craggy continent before him. A white light flashed through Tina's eyes. Area time acceleration. Boundless energy fluctuations engulfed heaven and earth as plants began to sprout from the barren continent, quickly transforming it into a lush, green land. Lin, I'll leave the Spirit Fish Clan ones here? Tina pointed to a spacious piece of land near the ocean. Lin took a glance at it and nodded. A ball of light exuding extremely powerful energy fluctuations was released from Tina's hand. Lin could sense this familiar life force fluctuations, and he thought back to the 9 balls of light that he had encountered in Chi Lu City. This ball of light was most likely one of them. Whoosh! The ball of light seemed to have exploded, and an extremely powerful life force energy enshrouded heaven and earth before condensing together. At this moment, Tina was the goddess of creation. Holy light lit up the entire world, and she pointed a finger at an empty space in the air. Over 1,000 translucent, snowy white eggs that contained boundless possibilities of life appeared there. And Lin felt like he knew the answer to the question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, at least in this world. Whoosh! Another burst of extremely powerful life force fluctuations swept forth. A live and graceful woman with a red fish tail appeared before Tina and Enlin. Hong Yuji, I'll leave these first-generation Spirit Fish clan members to you. Tina's words were like a decree from the heavens. The mermaid was not displeased in the slightest. Instead, she bowed her head and spoke in a gentle voice. Hong Yu will do her best to nurture our tribe so that we can flourish here. Enlin knew who this woman was. She was most likely the Return to Void stage mighty figure that the two red-robed elderly men had sacrificed to the fragment of the realm core. He couldn't help but remark, isn't this a little too unnatural? It doesn't reflect the spirit of a tribe that is striving to survive in an unfamiliar world. Tina blinked her emerald eyes, and she nodded in agreement. How about this? You can become a statue for now, and you can only come out when your tribe is in danger. Hong Yuji. Thus, Hong Yuji was transformed into a stone statue by Tina, and she stood at the center of over 1,000 spirit fish eggs. The words, Spirit Fish Patriarch, had been carved into the statue. When the baby spirit fish were born, they would definitely treat her as a god of creation, the mother of all spirit fish. Perhaps many years later, she would be worshipped by countless spirit fish. Chapter 625. Enlin felt that the so-called gods did not seem to be that big of a deal. After all, there was a woman who could be said to be a supreme deity by his side. She was still his pet beast. The more he thought about it, the more pressure he felt. Tina was already so awesome, but her master was still so lazy. What should he do? Enlin also knew that this was incomparable. Even if he worked hard for another 10,000 years, it would be impossible for him to reach the level of the god of creation. That was not something that could be achieved by relying on talent and strength alone. It required a great opportunity. He thought about it for a moment and completely let it go. He hugged Tina's leg and shouted, "Let's go!" Tina led him to another beach on the continent and released over 1,000 heavenly turtle eggs. She also summoned the Return to Void stage mighty figure, Priest Guewon, and transformed him into a statue that wouldn't appear unless he was in dire straits. Next up seems to be the dragon race. Should we release them into the sea? Build a house in the sea for them? What kind of houses do they like? Ah, so troublesome, Tina grumbled. There's no need to build a house. Just build a basin for them, Enlin suggested. Just like that, the birthplace of the Dragon Clan, an extremely simple and crude pit appeared under Enlin's suggestion. The statue of the Dragon Tribe's patriarch was a Return to Void stage mighty figure by the name of Aochin. We've arrived at the Stone Tribe. This is a rock golem, and I've found a good place as well, Tina said with a wide grin. The Stone Tribe had one as well? Enlin's heart stirred slightly. Why were all these races so familiar? There were no duplicates, and, Little Na, let me ask you, which mighty figures are the remaining life orbs? Their holy leader Feng Yu of the Stone Tribe, Flower Night Queen of the Darkwing Tribe, Holy Monarch Wu Zhe of the Holy Martial Clan, Dream Spirit Snake of the Snake Spirit Clan, Sword Sparrow Immortal of the Vermilion Bird Tribe, and Poison Demon God of the True Demon Tribe. What is it, Giant N? Tina asked curiously. As expected. Enlin frowned deeply. Is it a coincidence? Why did it have to be 9 of the 10 Realm Guardian races? What's the 10 Realm Guardian tribes? Tina was confused. Enlin didn't try to hide anything and explained everything that had happened in the Shouyang tomb to Tina. Tina's eyes widened upon hearing this. My God! What a coincidence! But why are there no Void Spirit Tribe living beings? Enlin rubbed the space between his eyebrows. How would I know? It can't be that we interrupted him before he finished, right? Ah! Tina was enraged. Now that you mention it, I really want to capture a void spirit tribe mighty figure. It's killing my obsessive-compulsive disorder. And Lin was speechless at the sight of Tina acting like a little girl. After waiting for her to calm down, the two of them set off again. They found a place filled with stone peaks and released over 1,000 stone tribe egg. Immediately afterward, Tina constructed another floating island and placed over 1,000 dark-winged tribe eggs upon it. And Lin was a little confused. Aren't the dark-winged tribe mammals? They were probably born directly from their mother's womb, right? Why do we have to use eggs? Tina smiled. This egg of mine can be used to nurture and protect the womb. I can set it to nurture the next generation in place of the mother. Of course, the next generation will be nurtured by the mother herself. What else could Lin say? Tina was someone who dared to do what she wanted. She truly did whatever she wanted. After that, they found a spirit lake and left the snake spirit tribe eggs there. They found a tall mountain enshrouded in clouds and mist and left the holy martial tribe eggs there. In the south, they placed the vermilion bird tribe eggs there. There were massive trees everywhere. In the west, they placed the true demon tribe eggs on a black continent that was rife with mutant beasts. All right. It's all up to them now. Tina clapped her hands with excitement and anticipation on her face. Don't get wiped out by the dinosaurs, Lin teased. Oomph. Tina pouted in an extremely adorable manner. I'm here. If I say they won't be wiped out, then they won't be wiped out. And Lin's lips twitched. You really are a god of creation. I don't need to put on a show. Tina laughed heartily before snapping her fingers. The flow of time accelerated again. Let's see how they develop. 9 different images appeared in the air as she spoke, allowing Lin to observe the 9 different tribes at the same time. Soon, the first batch of highly intelligent creatures in this world hatched and finally broke out of their shells. And Lin looked at the 9 tribes in their infant state. The most adorable tribe was the vermilion bird tribe. The newborn vermilion birds had white, fluffy feathers, and they looked like balls of cotton. There were also faint golden flames enshrouding their bodies, and their round eyes were extremely bright and mesmerizing, giving onlookers the urge to hold them in their hands. These so-called vermilion birds weren't actually vermilion birds. Instead, they were just birds that possessed the vermilion bird bloodline. And Lin didn't know how much vermilion bird bloodline the vermilion bird tribe had left on the Tai Chu continent. However, the vermilion bird clan being born in this world, when he saw the pure and holy flames, he knew that this was a vermilion bird clan with an extremely pure bloodline. By the way, Giant and Lin, what do the vermilion bird tribe usually eat? Tina asked. I don't really know. But birds usually eat insects, right? Haven't you heard of the saying, the early bird gets the worm? And Lin hesitated momentarily before replying. Tina clapped her hands together, and her eyes lit up. That makes sense. Thus, the newborn vermilion birds that ate the flames of heaven and earth were forced to eat the insects gifted to them by the mighty god of creation. As mentioned before, the most adorable vermilion birds were the vermilion birds. As such, the dragon tribe was undoubtedly the ugliest of the bunch. The newborn dragon tribe living beings didn't even have scales, and their tiny bodies squirmed in the water like thick earthworms. Even Tina was feeling a little disdainful upon seeing this. Thus, Tina and Lin teleported to the vermilion bird tribe's base camp. This was a massive bird's nest on a massive tree with many adorable vermilion bird babies resting on it. The two of them held up one baby each, and they played with them with curiosity and elation. And Lin gently stroked the head of one of the baby vermilion birds. The golden flames on its body didn't burn his hand, but it was a little warm. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The baby vermilion bird chirped nervously. Hey! You shouldn't be stroking them like that. You should be doing what I'm doing. Tina's voice suddenly sounded. And Lin turned to find Tina stroking the baby vermilion bird in a certain direction with a certain amount of force. The baby vermilion bird's eyes narrowed in bliss as it chirped with a hint of elation. Tina also smiled. An exquisitely beautiful woman in a white dress stroking an adorable vermilion bird was such a harmonious and beautiful scene that even Lin couldn't help but admire it. Elves were the most proficient beings among all living beings, so Lin wasn't surprised that she was able to do this. However, he sighed with emotion. When the baby vermilion bird was born, it had been hugged by the big boss of this world. He could probably brag about this for the rest of his life. As for the dragon tribe, stop messing around. Who would like to hug an earthworm? Just let them soak in the water. Chapter 6:26. Even though the dragon tribe was neglected due to their attractiveness, Tina wasn't going to let them starve to death. She would still distribute some small fish and shrimps for them to eat. After that, Lin and Tina went to all the tribes and gave them new student packages before departing with a satisfied expression. As for languages, Tina had intentionally or unintentionally instilled them with the Tai Chu language and pointed out a way for them to learn. Otherwise, Lin would have to be completely dumbfounded by the fact that he had to learn a few different types of indigenous languages. Now, the last step is to create a star, Tina said with a smile. Lin's heart jolted with shock as he stared at Tina with incredulity. Create stars? Shouldn't there be stars already? The stars you see in this world are fake. I created them so that the night wouldn't be too monotonous. You told me that the Dark Wing tribe needs to absorb the power of the stars to grow, so I have to create real stars, Tina explained. That doesn't make sense. I can clearly sense the power of the stars, Lin replied. What you see and feel is only because I want you to see and feel them. That's all. But, in essence, they are all fake. Oh right, even the moon is fake. Tina chuckled. Lin. He calmed down, rubbed the space between his eyebrows and continued, then what should you do? You have to realize that every single star in the sky is actually an extremely powerful star, which means that every single star is a sun. You want to create a sky full of stars? That's a project I can't even begin to imagine. Also, do you have enough space in your world? Tina wagged a slender finger as a charming smile appeared on her face, and she said, Who told you that a star that possesses the power of the stars has to be the sun? The light of the sun travels through the universe for countless miles and absorbs the energy of the universe to form the power of the stars. However, there is another way, which is to use the essence of the power of the stars to create stars that contain the power of the stars, then hang the stars in the sky not too far away from the continent. Then, I'll set up another rule of this world. All living beings in this world will have their strength constantly reduced once they're more than 1,000 miles away from the surface. As long as their strength doesn't surpass mine, they'll never be able to escape this world. But how can their strength surpass mine? I am the master of this world, ha ha ha. I believe they will get used to this rule and think that this rule is the truth of the world. If a highly intelligent life form were to use a technological creation or some kind of powerful divine ability to observe, they would be able to conclude that the stars are the sun in the universe that gives off light and heat. This is the scene I want them to see. In this way, not only did we suppress their actions, but we also gave them the illusion that the universe is very big and filled with infinite hope. Tina became more and more excited as she spoke, but Lin was starting to doubt his own life. Fake, it's all fake, the stars were fake, the moon was fake, and even this world was fake. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. He suddenly thought of Earth. Were the things that people saw what Nuwa wanted them to see, so that they could see it? After all, no one had really been to the galaxy, so could those things be fake? Then there was the Tai Chu continent, and Lin felt like he was being possessed, and the urge to explore and verify his theory was welling up in his heart. Sigh, what a pity. I still have to find an object that contains the power of the stars. Without a reference, I won't be able to create it. Tina suddenly sighed as she spoke, and a look of frustration appeared on her face. And Lin came to his senses, and a thought suddenly occurred to him. I have 2 stardust fruits that I collected from the huge starlight tree in my storage ring. They are imbued with the essential power of the stars, so they should be usable, right? Tina's entire body became excited upon hearing this. That's great. Let's go out first, Giant and Lin. Whoosh, a rush of dizziness ensued, and Enlin returned to his original world. Tina was standing before Enlin, swinging his arm with anticipation on her face. Giant Enlin, where are the stardust fruits? Hurry up and show them to me. Enlin brought out the stardust fruits upon hearing this. After Tina's appraisal, they were usable. Thus, Tina's mirror world became different, and all of the fake stars became real stars. Time passed by, and all of the living beings of the various tribes gradually grew up and began to reproduce. The first generation of dragon tribe cultivators gradually grew dragon scales, and their bodies also grew larger and larger as they became the rulers of the sea. They were blessed by the heavens, and each and every dragon was able to fuse the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into their bodies. In other words, during the Tao body stage, they were able to cultivate on their own. Furthermore, they could also control the power of water. After reaching adulthood, even the ferocious and violent dragon fish were no match for them. The pristine white holy martial clan cultivators were even more valiant and skilled in battle as they expanded their territory. They had developed a rudimentary martial Tao from a very young age, and they intentionally sparred with one another as well as taught the next generation. Adult holy martial clan cultivators loved to battle massive tyrannosauruses in order to hone their martial Tao. The most powerful holy martial clan cultivators could already kill a Tyrannosaurus rex with a single punch. Their bodies had most likely already reached the pinnacle of the Tao body stage. The Heavenly Turtle tribe and the Spirit Fish clan lived the most leisurely lives. They loved to explore the mysteries of the world, observe the stars at night, derive the principles of all things, and research major unsolved mysteries, such as who they were, where they came from, and why they were still alive. They would also occasionally explore the beauty of nature and invent all types of divination techniques and sorcery techniques. The Snake Spirit clan lived the most carefree lives. They possessed the ability to communicate with all things, understand all things, and feel all things' emotions. As such, they were always able to strike a favorable impression in the hearts of all living beings around them. They had countless underlings wherever they went, and it could be said that they were the most powerful tribe in the world. The Stone tribe lived the most monotonous and boring lives. They very rarely moved, and all they did was stand on the spot in a daze, absorbing the power of the earth and listening to the pulse of the earth. Grass grew on their bodies, and all types of small animals took up residence on their bodies, but they were completely oblivious. Oh, the most active time in their lives was probably when 2 Stone tribe cultivators spent the night together. They exercised vigorously for an entire minute. Enlin was extremely envious of this. The Dark Wing tribe lived the most leisurely lives. They slept during the day and wandered around at night, basking in the stars. They had nothing to do. Due to the fact that their nest was situated in the sky, all of the living beings on the land seemed to be inferior to them. They referred to themselves as envoys from the heavens, and they would occasionally spread their wings to fly to the land to patrol the mortal world. The Vermilion Bird tribe lived the most freedom. They had almost covered half of the continent, and they roamed the world without any restrictions. Tina was currently quite troubled by the issue of their reproduction. After all of them were so carefree and had never considered the issue of finding a mate. Even now, all of the Vermilion birds were single. In the worst-case scenario, she would have to force them to mate. Enlin was very envious of the Vermilion Bird tribe. They didn't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, but the heavens were willing to give them to them. The tribe that surprised Enlin the most was the True Demon tribe. They lived in the harshest environment and faced the largest number of mutant beasts. It could be said that their combat and survival abilities were the most powerful among all the tribes. As for why they were able to survive in that kind of environment, that was Tina's idea. The true demons were clearly antagonists, so she couldn't let them be too happy. These were Tina's exact words. And Lin was struck by a strong sense of sympathy toward the true demons upon hearing this. What kind of experience is it to have a subjective God? If the true demons were to learn this truth, they would probably cry tears of joy. Aside from their combat and survival abilities, they were also very good at cooking. They could cook and eat anything, and no mutant beast could escape their stomach. They were extremely similar to the Canton tribe. Perhaps this had something to do with the environment they lived in. They knew how to survive and how to eat. For some reason, Lin suddenly thought back to the strange illusionary realm in the Shouyang tomb as he watched the development of the true demons. There was also a little demon who knew how to cook there. Was this a coincidence? Chapter 6:27. In any case, these 9 tribes were all adapting to this world and were able to survive in this world through their own efforts. In the future, Tina and Lin wouldn't need to intervene anymore. Their arrival brought a new lease of life to this world and also influenced the structure of this world. That's right, the dinosaurs were still the rulers of this world. However, the emergence of these 9 tribes dealt an unprecedented blow to the dinosaurs. As the generations passed, the 9 tribes became more and more powerful. Some of the tribes that were proficient in research, such as the Snake Spirit Clan, Holy Martial Clan, and Heavenly Turtle Tribe, had even developed basic cultivation methods. However, on the other hand, the dinosaurs' power didn't increase at all. And Lin knew that it was their intelligence that prevented the dinosaurs from becoming more powerful. They weren't highly intelligent creatures, so they couldn't create or learn cultivation methods and divine abilities. They could only rely on their innate talent. As such, some of the most powerful beings among the dinosaurs were lacking, so they could only rely on numbers. At this moment, spirit-nurturing stage powerful beings had already appeared among the 9 tribes, and the power level of this world had risen to another level. According to Lin, this world had almost reached the pinnacle of the low magic planes. As the 9 tribes continued to expand, an unavoidable war with the dinosaurs finally erupted. This was an earth-shattering battle that involved the issue of territory and resources. Within a forest in the south, hordes of winged dragons pounced toward a gargantuan green tree. They could sense an extremely powerful vital energy fluctuation emanating from the tree. They loved trees like this, and they loved this forest. Vermilion birds could inhabit trees and change the nature of trees. This group of close to 100 winged dragons was only facing a single vermilion bird. Countless sound waves and air blasts instantly crashed toward the bird, which was enshrouded in white flames. Tree trunks were snapped and leaves were pulverized in the wake of the shockwaves. The firebird was fearless. With a soft cry, flames swept out from the sky and collided with the incoming attack. The energy tore each other apart. Then, under the horrified gazes of the hundreds of pterosaurs, the flames broke through the air cannons and quickly enveloped the hundreds of pterosaurs. Blood-curdling cries reverberated through the air as one cooked winged dragon after another plummeted from the sky. The firebird revealed a look of disdain. After glancing at him, it flew back to the huge green tree and closed its eyes to rest. High up in the sky, Lin clicked his tongue in wonder as he turned to the woman beside him. As expected of the baby you carried, it's already at the spirit-nurturing final stage. You didn't give it a hack, did you? Humph! Am I such an elf? Tina waved her fists through the air as she glowered at Lin. Lin shrugged and looked at the hundreds of images in front of him. These images were all of the battles between the various races and the dinosaurs. In the end, the battle was always one-sided, and the dinosaurs were beaten black and blue. Even if the dinosaurs won the battle, it was through the Dragon Sea strategy. There was no advantage at all. For example, in the image, an army of 30 dragons was torn apart by thousands of ichthyosaurs. Before they died, they killed hundreds of ichthyosaurs before they died of exhaustion. Another example was the intelligent dinosaurs who invented all types of stone tools, protective gear, and weapons. However, the holy martial clan invented gloves that could draw vital energy out of one's body to enhance one's strength and spell technique. As a result, weapons were on a completely different level. An adult holy martial tribe cultivator could shatter the head of a shark-toothed dragon wearing a stone helmet with a pair of gauntlets on it. The difference in weapons was ultimately a difference in intellect and talent. No, this was a difference in intelligence. Even though the dinosaurs had been enhanced by Tina's aptitude, this was the upper limit of their life force. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't reverse the situation unless they could become highly intelligent life forms. The battle over territory continued for several decades. In the end, the dinosaurs' numbers plummeted, and their territory shrank further and further. The former rulers of the world were no longer glorious and were reduced to second-tier life forms. Now, a new ruler of the world had been born. They were the 9 tribes with high aptitude and aptitude. After they established their position in the world, some sort of change occurred in the world. It seemed to have become more lively and full of vigor. It seemed to be full of vigor and vitality. Alright, the spiritual aura value of this world is high enough now. We can start creating humans. Tina's eyes were glowing with excitement and anxiety. And Lin was also very excited to hear about creating humans. Creating humans. This was the most legendary miracle in the world. No one knew where humans came from, but the humans on Earth were most likely created by Nuwa. Then what kind of being was Nuwa? She was a legendary being that transcended beyond the Tai Chu continent, even more so than the Tao integration stage true gods. No one could describe her exact cultivation base, but it was not an exaggeration to refer to her as a god of creation. Now, Tina was going to do the same thing as Nuwa. How could Lin remain calm? Then what do we need to prepare? Lin asked with excitement. I might need an immortal pill that contains both wood type and spiritual power. Tina looked at Lin with a hint of unease on her delicate features, as if she was afraid that Lin would refuse. No problem. Lin clapped his hands together before asking, "Is there anything else you need?" "Huh." Tina faltered slightly as if she didn't expect Lin to agree so readily. "Not at the moment." "All right. Let me out and I'll get you an immortal pill right away," Lin said without any hesitation. Tina looked at him with a grateful expression before placing a soft, warm hand on Lin's forehead. After a rush of dizziness, Lin regained consciousness. Tina's hand was still placed on Lin's forehead, and she slowly opened her eyes with an exhausted expression. "Giant Lin, I'm going to sleep for a bit. Wake me up when you come back." "No problem." Lin hurried out the door and flew toward Do Shui Palace. 4 hours later, he returned excitedly with a 5th-grade immortal pill in his hand. However, right at this moment, Lin saw a familiar figure. Su Xiaolan had her hands on her hips as she looked at Lin with an enraged expression. "Lin, you've been skipping classes for close to a month, and it's almost time for the end-of-term exams, so why aren't you coming to class? Even I can't apply for leave for you now." I'm at the most important stage now, so please apply for a few more days," Lin said with a slightly sheepish expression. "The most important stage? What are you busy with?" Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she stared at Lin's flushed face. "I'm busy making humans with Tina," Lin replied excitedly. Su Xiaolan's body swayed slightly. "Making humans? That's right. Haha, you didn't expect that, did you?" Lin laughed heartily before suddenly feeling a chill run down his spine. "That's right, I really didn't expect that." Su Xiaolan's face convulsed slightly, but she then realized something and asked, "How do you do it?" "Didn't I tell you before that I can project my consciousness into Tina's world? Right now, her world has already developed to the point where humans can be created. Isn't it exciting to create new humans?" Lin asked excitedly. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief as she nodded. "It is quite exciting. Then go do what you need to do." I'll apply for a week of leave for you at most. After that is the end-of-term exams, and the homeroom teacher will come to find you. I won't be able to stop you then. Su Xiaolan waved her hand. Thank you, Celestial Maiden Xiaolan. Unlin waved goodbye after receiving her permission, and he couldn't wait to return to his dorm. Geez. In order to see that world make humans, he doesn't even want to look at me. Is it really that fun to make humans? Su Xiaolan murmured to herself before shaking her head and walking toward her dorm.